Chapter 743. This round of military reorganization involved 3 field legions, totaling more than 200,000 soldiers. It was another huge military expenditure for the territory. According to estimates, just the one-time military expenditure would reach 1.5 million gold coins if one included pensions. Even more terrifying was the daily military expenditure. After the 3 major armies were reorganized, the number of Shanghai City's field legions would reach 13. Just the monthly military expenditure would reach a staggering 500,000 gold coins. Together with the 5 fleets of the Nanyang Navy, as well as the military's monthly expenditure on rations, weapons and equipment replenishment and upgrading, as well as war pensions, Shanghai City's monthly military expenditure would exceed 1 million gold coins. More than 60% of Shanghai City's financial income was invested into the military. After deducting other financial expenditure, Shanghai City's monthly tax revenue exceeded 1 million, but it still did not have a single bit of net financial income. It could even be said that some of the territory's major projects had to be completed with loans from the Bank of the Four Seas. The one-time expenditure for the military expansion was paid out of Ouyang Shua's own pocket. He took out 1.5 million gold coins from his savings. If not, the finance department would have to seek another loan from the Bank of the Four Seas. As such, Ouyang Shua's personal wealth had shrunk to 6.5 million gold coins. If the promised 500,000 gold coins for the 7th Research Institute were deducted, he would only be left with 6 million gold coins. For Gaia's 4th annual global auction, Ouyang Shua needed to prepare at least 5 million gold coins. This also meant that Ouyang Shua did not have much money at his disposal. This was Shanghai City. Not only did it have developed commerce, it also had the support of shipbuilding, military, textile, banks, and steel industries. If it were any other territory, they would have long been dragged down by such a huge military expenditure. As such, it was not difficult to understand why Ouyang Shua wanted to promote ocean trade. If not for the huge profits from ocean trade, Shanghai City would not be able to support such a large army. If he really expanded the military, the territory's various constructions would come to a standstill. Shanghai City was able to lead the territory's industrialization while expanding its military, accelerate the territory's infrastructure, and improve basic education and basic medical care. It could be considered a miracle in the wilderness. Therefore, if the territory were to blindly wage war without considering the territory's internal affairs, solidify the territory's foundation, and promote the development of various industries, the result would be being completely exhausted by the army. This was the situation described by being militaristic. With the implementation of the military reorganization plan, the various corps would also begin to mobilize. Needless to say, the city guard would set off for home after the battle. The main army would first head to Oceanwood City, then board the battleship and return to Shanghai City by sea. Ouyang Shua did not leave a reserve force for the Lingnan battle, which was a very risky choice. If there was any emergency in the western region or the northern region, it would be too late to rescue them. The city guards stationed outside Shanghai City were the main reserve force, and they could be teleported to the other provinces at any time to reinforce the front lines. After the country was established, the city guards could no longer be mobilized as they wished in order to protect the capital. Unless the situation was dire, the city guards would be permanently stationed outside the city to protect the safety of the capital at all times. Similarly, it was not advisable for the imperial guards to go out to battle often. Otherwise, if the vast capital city did not have a powerful army to protect it at all times, it would easily cause unrest in the imperial court, destabilize the hearts of the people, and cause turbulent undercurrents. The slightest carelessness could lead to the downfall of the empire. This had been the case for every dynasty in history. Even at the juncture of life and death, the emperors would not easily move the city guard or imperial guard out of the capital. This was the reason for this. Besides the city guard, the 1st Imperial Guard Army and the 2nd Dragon Stallion Army would rest and reorganize before setting out. They would travel by land through Zhaoqing County, Wuzhou County, Xuanzhou County, and Jinan County to return to the battlefield in Yunnan. The entire journey would probably take 1 month. The drawbacks of mobilizing soldiers on such a large scale were obvious. More than half of the time was spent on the road. This was precisely why a war zone was needed. In the future, wars would generally be handled by war zones, and it was very rare for an army to be moved across war zones. As for the 2nd Imperial Guard Army and the 4th Dragon Stallion Army, they would follow the same route to the battlefield in Yunnan. The time needed to reorganize was estimated to be around 1 month. Thus, by the time the armies were reorganized, the commanders of the 3 countries would have finished their studies in the Marshall Lecture Hall, and they would have just enough time to join up with the rest of the army. The 4 armies of the Dragon Stallion Army and the 2 armies of the Imperial Guard made up a total of 420,000 soldiers. This would be all the soldiers that would be sent to conquer the city of Yunnan. After the 3rd Army of the Leopard Army was reorganized, they would set out for the Withering Stronghold. In the end, the armies would disperse, and the defense of Southridge Province would be handed over to the Brave Tiger Army. Only the Southridge War Zone that had been set up previously would be worthy of its name. According to Sun Bin, the commander of the Brave Tiger Army, the headquarters of the war zone would be set up in Shaozhou County. The 1st and 2nd Armies of the Brave Tiger Army would be stationed in Shaozhou County. The 3rd Army, led by Fan Lihua, would be stationed in Chaozhou County. Ouyang Shuo still felt that there was a need to station a field army on the border of South Min Province. As for what the dragon-seeking acupuncture point would do once they learned of it, Ouyang Shuo did not care. Ouyang Shuo would not be lenient in the slightest when it came to defensive measures. The other counties of Southridge Province would be handed over to the local guard divisions, and no field army would be stationed there. The Brave Tiger Army's main area of defense would be the city of South Xiangnan to the north. As for the city of North Xiangnan's neighbor, the city of North Xiangnan, it would be the responsibility of the Leopard Army. As the Dragon Stallion Army moved, the Leopard Army would be responsible for the defense of the entire Southridge Province. In truth, they only needed to defend the north. To the east of Southridge Province was the Southridge Province, and to the west was the Yunnan Province, so there was no need to worry. To the south, Zhili County was guarded by the City Guard Corps and the Imperial Guard Corps, so there was no need to worry. At the same time, the establishment of the Southridge War Zone was only natural. To the Leopard Army, the most important mission was to recapture Southridge County as soon as possible. At that time, the army would no longer need to hole up in the Withering Strongholds. They could collectively move to Southridge County. Southridge County's vast border bordered both the North Sichuan Province and the South Xiangnan Province. Thus, even if they only needed to defend one side, it would not be easy for the Leopard Army. As for how to take Southridge County, the General Administration of Military Affairs had already made a comprehensive plan. Based on the time that had passed, Han Xin was probably already making his move. With the conclusion of the Battle of Southridge, the headquarters of the Dragon Stallion Army, led by Bai Qi, would be moved to Lingxi City. At the same time, the General Administration of Military Affairs would establish the Yunnan War Zone ahead of time. The War Zone commander and the Dragon Stallion Army headquarters would be 2 sides of the same coin. Bai Qi would be appointed as the commander of the Yunnan War Zone, also known as the Yunnan Commander. Similarly, Sun Bin would be appointed as the Southridge Commander, while Han Xin would be appointed as the Southridge Commander. The 3 divine generals would each be responsible for a war zone, commanding a field army and managing the garrison divisions of the various counties in the war zone. At the same time, Huitubing would be officially appointed as the commander of the Imperial Guard. Using this opportunity, Ouyang Shuo would officially fix the title of the commander of the Shanghai Army to the position of commander. Henceforth, the commander would be the highest position a general of Shanghai City could reach. The 4 commanders would be second only to Ouyang Shuo, and they were truly the 4 heavyweights of the army. In the future, when the time was right, Ouyang Shuo planned to establish a military organization of a higher level than the General Administration of Military Affairs, similar to the Military Council or the Grand Council. This organization would transcend the boundaries of the Army and Navy, as well as the territorial boundaries of the war zones. It would become the highest military authority of Shanghai City, responsible for the highest level of military affairs. There is no doubt that the commanders of the army would be permanent members of this organization. After the military conference concluded, Ouyang Shua began to truly get busy. As a supreme ruler of Shanghai City, there were some responsibilities that Ouyang Shua had to bear. For example, he had to meet the surrendered generals of the Allied forces and accept their allegiance. The surrendered generals here did not only refer to Feng Yi, who had been appointed as the commander of the army, but also the 5 generals who had been confirmed to be promoted to division commanders. In addition, Ouyang Shua also had to meet the generals with potential recommended by Hua, Xiubing, and the other generals. He had to inspect and question them one by one, so that he would have a good idea of what was going on. Ouyang Shua had to meet them at least once, so that the generals could get to know him and leave an impression. In addition, Ouyang Shua had to personally inspect the surrendered troops, visit every camp of the prisoners of war, convey the territory's condolences, solve their problems, and boost their morale. If not, how could Ouyang Shua make the reorganized army completely loyal to him? Subjectively, none of the generals had thought of turning the army under their command into their own private army. But objectively, if Ouyang Shua did not constantly remind the soldiers and show his presence, there would be all sorts of hidden dangers. After commanding the army for 3 years, Ouyang Shua deeply agreed with this. In addition to strengthening his control over the army, Ouyang Shua also had to travel all over the 3 counties and inspect every city. At the very least, he had to visit all the major cities. If he did not do this, he would not be able to appease the people, let alone the various local forces. Although the wilderness was not like reality, the situation was still complicated. If Shanghai City wanted to take over the 3 counties in a short period of time without any twists and turns, Ouyang Shua had to be at the forefront. His appearance as the Lord often had a greater symbolic meaning. Ouyang Shua's role was not something that the various prefectural governors and officials could replace. In this way, Ouyang Shua would have to stay in Lingnan province for at least a month. This month would be Ouyang Shua's busiest month. Just the number of people he had to meet and the banquets he had to attend were countless. At the same time, it was also to give the territory some breathing room. Chapter 745, Yunnan Province, Alliance Headquarters. The lightning-fast fall of Lingnan City made Qin Fun and the others regret it, especially when they learned that the 2 legions of Shanghai City that had evacuated from the Yunnan battlefield had already set off and were on their way back to Yunnan. They regretted it even more. If we had known this would happen, we would have gone to support them, even if it meant risking our lives. The sky above Yunnan was covered with dark clouds. Qin Fun and the others originally hoped that Lingnan City and Shanghai City would fight until both sides suffered heavy losses. At the very least, they would destroy 2 or 3 of Shanghai City's legions. If that happened, Shanghai City would not have the strength to attack Yunnan City again. This would buy them some precious time to expand their army once again. It had to be said that their plan was not bad. Who would have thought that Lingnan City would be so weak? A lord complained in his heart, "They're too weak." In the end, not only did Lingnan City not cause any trouble for Shanghai City, but it also sent a wave of people to Shanghai City. Shanghai City's army did not decrease, but increased by 3 more legions. This was too embarrassing. If you ask me, south of Rosy Clouds is too cowardly. The army has already reached the border, but they retreated before the battle even started. They're too spineless, a bunch of trash. A lord began to complain about his allies. It really didn't make sense to say that. At the very least, south of Rosy Clouds sent reinforcements, but they were really just watching from the sidelines. At the end of the day, they were pointing fingers at the other party. It was really like a thief crying thief. The lords were only doing this to vent the extreme uneasiness in their hearts. The fall of Lingnan City had a huge impact on them, and they were somewhat caught off guard. They suddenly felt as if they had no anchor in their hearts, and they were all panicking. They were afraid that when they woke up, they would become the next batch of prisoners. What should we do? A huge problem was placed in front of the lords. Family Hua used a single army to defend against the attack of 250,000 allied soldiers and 100,000 enemies. This bloody result of the battle made the lords of Yunnan City truly realized the gap between their troops and Shanghai City's army. They're not on the same level at all. A lord lamented. A chasm, a huge chasm. The alliance wasn't just weak in terms of individual strength, but also in terms of leadership. In the Battle of Baishur City, Fan Lihua's artistic command and dispatch, including the arrangements before the battle, played a decisive role in it. She was worthy of the title of Emperor-level general. Thinking back, the suzerains felt even more terrified, because the one they were about to face was a divine general, the god of slaughter, Bai Qi. Even among divine generals, Bai Qi was one of the best. In the wilderness, Bai Qi continued his undefeatable legend and was truly the #1 war god of Shanghai City. Bai Qi's Dragon Stallion army was the strongest army in Shanghai City, and they were even more ferocious than the stalwart Tiger Army. Thinking of this, the future of Yunnan city-state became bleaker. The situation was very obvious. They were unable to stop this wave of attacks from Shanghai City by themselves. Temporarily expanding the army was of no help at all. The newly recruited recruits had not gone through training, had not been on the battlefield, and had not seen blood. Not only were they useless, but they would also lower the average standard of the entire army. What was even more frightening was that if they recruited a group of rookies, they would suddenly lose control and flee in the middle of the battle. That would be embarrassing. At that time, the entire army would be dragged into the abyss. Just thinking about it made one's scalp go numb. This was also why Shanghai City liked to take in prisoners of war on a large scale. No matter how bad a prisoner of war was, at least they had seen blood and were no longer recruits on the battlefield. Just this point alone made them several times better than recruits. The drawbacks of a city-state were completely exposed in this aspect. In order to fight against the giants of the wilderness, they gathered the strength of the province and formed a city-state together. This naturally avoided internal friction and could unite against external enemies. At the same time, it also prevented wars between the territories. Without war, the territorial soldiers could not be tempered and could not grow. The defeat of the alliance in the Battle of Baishur City could not be said to have nothing to do with this. There was not much problem with Feng Yi's command. It was just that the alliance did not have enough vigor and tenacity, so they were unable to launch an imposing attack. This was why the Fan Lihua Corps had been able to hold out for an entire day. If the attacking side had been the Dragon Stallion army, the result would have been rewritten. This logic was also applicable to the Yunnan city-state, and it was even more cruel. Because the Yunnan province was rugged and the territories were far from each other, the alliance's combat experience was close to zero. On the contrary, every unit of Shanghai City had been tempered by blood and fire. As for the Dragon Stallion army, they were the oldest unit of Shanghai City and had the most combat experience. There was basically no comparison between the two. The future is bleak, and the road ahead is cut off. The lords felt despair and couldn't help but lament. Who can save the city-state? Qin Fan gave the answer, saying sorrowfully, in the entire China region, the only one that can save us is the Yan-Huang alliance. No one else has the courage to fight against Shanghai City. South of Rosy Cloud's cold retreat caused Qin Fan to automatically exclude the South Xiangnan city-state. As for the North Sichuan city-state, there was no hope for them. Right now, only the Yan-Huang alliance had enough motivation to interfere in the Yunnan War. Di Chun and the others didn't interfere in the Lingnan War. Will they help us? A lord questioned Qin Fan's judgment. It was no wonder. The Yan-Huang alliance's disappearance from the Lingnan battlefield was very surprising. There had long been news that the Yan-Huang alliance was going to attack Shanghai City in the Lingnan battlefield, but it turned out to be empty talk. Qin Fan, on the other hand, knew more and said with a bitter smile, "It's not that the Yan-Huang alliance doesn't want to interfere, but before they could make any preparations, the battle took a decisive turn. So Di Chun and the others are really willing to send troops to help us?" When the other lords heard this, a glimmer of hope flashed in their eyes. They were like a group of drowning people, not letting go of any straw that could save them. That's right, there's no such thing as a free lunch in this world. The lords weren't stupid. Qin Fan, on the other hand, was calm. Think about it. If we lose, Shanghai City will occupy 3 provinces, and its territory will be 3 times that of Dichun and the others. At that time, will they still be able to move Shanghai City? You mean that the Battle of Yunnan is the Yin-Huang Alliance's last chance to attack Shanghai City? Some of the lords began to recover, and their eyes became brighter and brighter. That's the logic. On this matter, both of us have the same request. Qin Fan nodded. It will take some time for the Shanghai City army to reach Yunnan. This time difference is our last chance. We must reach an agreement with the Yin-Huang Alliance in the shortest time possible and make arrangements in advance. Qin Fan's words had a hidden meaning. The Lingnan city-state was defeated, of course, because of the difference in strength. Apart from that, there was another factor that could not be ignored and played a decisive role in the dark. That was Shanghai City launched a large-scale surprise attack. Shanghai City used the Yunnan city-state as a pretense to create a diversion and caught the Lingnan city-state off guard, deceiving everyone. Before the war, the Lingnan city-state was not fully prepared for the war at all. Not only the Lingnan city-state, but even the allies like the Xiangnan city-state, Xiongba, Dichun, and the other troublemakers did not realize this. When the war broke out, they only started to prepare in a hurry, but it was already too late. Because of this, Xiongba and the others felt regretful. In comparison, Shanghai City could be said to be scheming, and they had considered all aspects. Their tactics had even been deducing since half a year ago. If that was the case, how could they not win? The various weapons carried by Fan Lihua's army was a clear proof. Without the tactical arrangements in advance, how could Fan Lihua so decisively build such an unusual camp? The following Battle of Yunnan was obviously different. Shanghai City would not be so stupid as to play the same tactic again, and it would not work. Not to mention the Yunnan city-state. Even the Xiangnan city-state and the Chuanbei city-state would increase their vigilance after this shock, and they would not give Shanghai City a chance to attack. It was reported that the south of Rosy Clouds had already proposed in the joint conference that within half a year, the Alliance Army would expand to 250,000 soldiers, and all of them would be stationed in the southern part of the province, and they would be locked in a stalemate with the brave Tiger Army. The Chuanbei city-state would probably do something similar. The strong expansion of Shanghai City had forced its neighbors to go down the path of militarism. There is a rumor that the result of the Battle of Lingnan had even alarmed the person in Chengdu. Feng Qingyang of the Swordsman City had been frequently appearing in Chengdu recently, and it seemed to be pointing at something. Some people speculated that the 2 giants of Sichuan might be heading toward the path of cooperation. Unlike Qin Huang and Han Wu, Liu Bei seemed to be more ambitious, or rather, more restless. There was an irreconcilable hatred between Liu Bei and Shanghai City. Therefore, Liu Bei did not want to live in seclusion in the palace, and he was even more unwilling to limit his influence to Chengdu County. Some people speculated that Liu Bei might want to reoccupy Sichuan. However, the largest lord of Sichuan, Feng Qingyang, had no interest in hegemony and only wanted to be the leader of the martial arts world. As a result, there was no fundamental conflict between the two. It seemed to be a good choice for the two to cooperate and complement each other. However, this matter was too complicated and it was difficult for outsiders to understand. However, one thing was certain. In the near future, Sichuan would usher in a drastic change. No matter what the change was, it would not be good news for Shanghai City. After all, both of them were enemies of Shanghai City. Therefore, the upcoming battle in Yunnan would be a head-on battle of the century. What are the conditions for the Yin-Huang Alliance to send troops? The lords of the cities did not believe that Dichun and the others would be willing to be Leifeng. While attacking Shanghai City, they would also seize a certain amount of benefits. This was the style of those aristocratic families. Chapter 746. Lingnan Province, Chaozhou County. An undercurrent surged outside the territory, yet Ouyang Shuo remained motionless, and he continued his patrol in accordance with the prescribed order. During the patrol, he had to deal with the memorials sent by the Southern Protectorate. On this day, Ouyang Shuo and his entourage stopped at Xingning County. There was a nameless courtyard in Xingning County that was guarded by 3,000 divine guards. Not even a fly could get in. The courtyard was guarded by the personal guards, and every corner was monitored. After the Battle of Red Cliffs, the valiant General Su Chu became the captain of the personal guards. Ouyang Shuo expanded the personal guards to 200 people and implemented 2 shifts to protect his safety 24 hours a day. Every personal guard had a unique skill and could fight 10 people at once. Ouyang Shuo would not be capricious when he was traveling. The security work was done to the extreme. Other than the divine guards and the personal guards, the shadow guards also arranged a secret unit to guard him day and night. Before Ouyang Shuo arrived at Chaozhou County, the 3rd Corps of the Brave Tiger Army had already combed through the entire county to get rid of any fish that slipped through the net. The entire security work was closely linked and there was not a single blind spot. In the study, Ouyang Shuo was burning the midnight oil to read the memorials. The endless meetings during the day and the 2 banquets at noon and night did not wear down Ouyang Shuo's willpower. He was full of energy and read the memorials late into the night. The memorials that Ouyang Shuo was holding were from the Department of Agriculture of the administration. After the ocean voyage, Ouyang Shuo successfully exchanged the weaving machine manufacturing technology from William. The No. 7 Research Institute had already begun to tackle the key problems of the weaving machine and would have results by the end of the year. The prosperity of the textile industry in the territory was already in sight. Because of this, Ouyang Shuo also ordered the Department of Agriculture to formulate a detailed silkworm breeding promotion plan while instructing the No. 7 Research Institute to tackle the key problems of the loom technology. Ouyang Shuo's goal was to expand the silkworm breeding, especially the colorful silkworm breeding, to the entire territory. The scale of the plantation would exceed 1 million hectares and the silk output would exceed 10 million units. If not, the future textile industry would not be able to be supported. Ouyang Shuo was very clear that if the loom was used on a large scale, the demand for silk raw materials would be terrifying. He did not want the loom to be mass-produced, but the raw materials could not keep up, which would affect the cloth output. Every industry must connect the upstream and downstream to form a matching industrial chain. Only then would it have a future. The memorials submitted by Sun Yanong, the Director General of Agriculture, indicated that there had been a breakthrough in this matter. Through the mediation of the Department of Agriculture, a plan was finally agreed upon by all parties. The Textile Industry Association would invest 100,000 gold coins, and the General Administration of Finance would allocate 300,000 gold coins as a special fund. In addition, they would borrow 200,000 gold coins from the Bank of the Four Seas in the name of the Department of Agriculture, totaling 600,000 gold coins. They would jointly establish a silkworm breeding support fund to support the farmers in the counties of the territory in silkworm breeding. At the same time, each county would also allocate a certain amount of special support funds from the county's finance. In this way, the core financial problem was finally solved. Ouyang Shuo didn't interfere in this matter, nor did he pay for it himself. Compared to the entire territory, Ouyang Shuo's 6 million gold coins really didn't count for much. If he, the Lord, had to pay for everything, then what was the point of having a bunch of ministers? The territory had its own rules. Setting up a joint fund was a creative solution. The territory's finance, industry associations, local government, and governing bodies all played their respective roles, each performing their own duties and working together. In ancient times, it could be said to be perfect. After Ouyang Shuo finished reading, he wrote at the end of the memorial, "Very good. Implemented accordingly." The establishment of the fund has value as a reference. We can consider extending it to other areas of agriculture. I hope Zhou Xiang will consider it. Closing the memorial, Ouyang Shuo picked up the next one. The memorial was sent by Du Ruhui. It only reported one piece of news. The No. 1 general of the Three Kingdoms, Lu Bu, whom Ouyang Shuo had been looking forward to, had finally come to Shanghai City to meet with Jiao Chan. There were 2 other people who came with Lu Bu. One was the strategist Chen Gong, and the other was the General Gao Shan. Chen Gong, courtesy name Gong Tai, was Lu Bu's chief strategist during the last years of the Eastern Han Dynasty. He was a straightforward and resourceful person. When he was young, he befriended many famous people. In 192 AD, the provincial governor of Yin province, Liu Dai, died in the battle against the Yellow Turban of Qing province. Chun Gong and the others advocated for Cao Cao to take over as the governor of Yin province. However, after Cao Cao killed Bien Rang and other famous people at the end of the Han dynasty, Chun Gong fell out with Cao Cao. He persuaded Zhang Miao to betray Cao Cao and welcome Lu Bu to Yin province. He helped Lu Bu attack Cao Cao and took over Yin province and Su province. In Xiapi City, Lu Bu did not listen to Chun Gong's plan and failed. After Lu Bu was defeated, he was captured by Cao Cao along with Lu Bu and was determined to die. Even during the Three Kingdoms period, Chun Gong could be considered a top-notch strategist. Unfortunately, Chun Gong was a bit of a hipster. He was too upright. Because he could not stand Cao Cao's cruelty, he always went against Cao Cao. In the end, he chose Lu Bu, an unwise master, and died. In history, Lu Bu's general Gao Shun was also executed along with Lu Bu. Another general under Lu Bu, Zhang Liao, chose to submit to Cao Cao. In the end, he became one of the 5 great generals of Cao Wei. Gao Shun's ability was comparable to Zhang Liao's. If you read the history of the Three Kingdoms carefully, you would find that Gao Shun was a famous general who is buried in history. Gao Shun was simply a perfect soldier. Not only was he fierce and good at fighting, but he was also good at training his soldiers. The troops that he trained were known as the rank-breaking camp. They were an elite troop in the history of the Three Kingdoms. In addition, Gao Shun was also a brave and intelligent general. He was always able to give Lu Bu the right advice at the crucial moment. He was also very methodical in dealing with unexpected situations. In terms of moral character, it was specifically recorded in the Chronicles of the Heroes of the late Han Dynasty that Gao Shun did not drink alcohol or accept bribes. Gao Shun was also very loyal to Lu Bu. He did not take credit for himself and was not arrogant. Even if he was not put in an important position by Lu Bu and was suspected, he did not complain. In the face of life and death, he chose to sacrifice himself for justice. Regardless of whether his loyalty to Lu Bu was worth it or not, in terms of moral character and morality, Gao Shun was undoubtedly a role model for his contemporaries. Shanghai City did not lack valiant generals. The only thing it lacked was a general like Gao Shun who was good at training soldiers. Not to mention Lu Bu's arrangement, Gao Shun would be able to get a place in Shanghai City and display his expertise in training soldiers. The arrival of Lu Bu, Chun Gong, and Gao Shun was undoubtedly good news. Ouyang Shu commented at the end of the memorial, asking Du Ruhui to make arrangements for the 3 of them and arrange positions for them when he returned to Shanghai City. Putting down the memorial, Ouyang Shu raised his head and looked outside the window. The bright moon hung high in the night sky. The sky was clear, and the air was clear. It was a rare good weather. Looking through the night sky, Ouyang Shu seemed to be able to feel that there was a giant dragon high up in the sky, using the moonlight to breathe. Its aura was continuous and majestic. After the Lingnan War, Shanghai City's territory expanded to 3 counties. The one who benefited the most was the Dragon of Providence. Affected by this, the Dragon of Providence's body expanded once again. Now, the Dragon of Providence was using the moonlight to condense its body. Ouyang Shu could vaguely feel that the purple aura in the Dragon of Providence's body was becoming more and more abundant. This was a sign that the territory was flourishing. Looking away, Ouyang Shu roused himself and continued to read the memorial. The affairs of the territory were complicated. Even with the assistance of the various ministers, Ouyang Shu could not clear his mind. In the wilderness, wars were frequent. Governing by doing nothing was a false proposition. Of course, this was also Ouyang Shu's tempering. The territory grew from a village to a town, from a county to a county, and finally to the edge of the establishment of a nation. While Ouyang Shu witnessed the territory's growth, his personal ability also improved by leaps and bounds. In the real world, Ouyang Shu was now a young talent. The last memorial was submitted by Ingyu. They were all related to the territory's various pillar industries. While the territory's various industries were flourishing, they also encountered their own difficulties and bottlenecks. First was the most profitable industry, the shipbuilding industry. In the 3 years of Gaia, the territory's most dazzling industry was the shipbuilding industry. In terms of glory, it was the prosperity of the shipbuilding industry that laid the foundation for long-distance navigation. It was the foundation that supported the crazy expansion of the Nanyang Navy's 5 major fleets. It could be said that without the prosperity of the shipbuilding industry, there would not be the formation of the 5 major fleets. Naturally, there would not be the heroic image of the Shanghai City Navy sailing the seas and dominating the world. Everything was supported by countless shipbuilders, the heroes behind the scenes. The shipbuilding industry not only brought glory, it also brought crazy profits. According to the statistics of the General Administration of Finance, in just the first half of Gaia's 3rd year, the territory had earned more than 4 million gold coins from the sale of merchant ships. In addition, there was the windfall of warships. The shipbuilding industry had become the backbone of the territory's finances, supporting half of the territory's finances. Even the similar star industry, the military industry, could not be compared to it. It had to be said that the profits from the monopoly were really crazy. Under the windfall, there were also hidden worries. With the opening of the Grand Line, China's demand for merchant ships increased. The territory's major shipyards' orders were already scheduled until the second half of next year. The surge in orders was a happy thing. Ingyu reported the situation, but it made Ouyang Shuo frown. In the game, the speed of ship construction was accelerated, but the materials needed to build the ship were not scrimped at all. Behind every ship, there was a large number of trees being cut down. And the wood used to build the ship had extremely high quality requirements. Ordinary trees were not good enough. Moreover, different troops had different requirements for wood. A complete warship often involved fir, pine, cypress, teak, elm, redwood, camphor, nanmu, catalpa, cypress, and other kinds of wood. As a result, the forest within the territory had been overcut. The 100,000 mountains where the Lianzhou Basin and Lingnan Province intersect had been cut down into wasteland. To this day, the territory was facing a crisis of wood shortage. Chapter 747. Speaking of timber, Southeast Asia's Annam, Siam, Johor, and Java were all rich in timber. Among them, Siam and Johor had business dealings with Shanghai City. Shanghai City even had a large shipyard in Singapore, so it had the geographical advantage. And you mentioned in the memorial that the Department of Commerce had arranged for a trade negotiation team to go to the 2 countries to negotiate the timber trade in the near future. If it went well, it would solve the urgent need of the shipbuilding industry. Of course, this was not a long-term solution. Not to mention the high cost of ocean transportation, whether it was Siam or Johor, it was impossible for them to give Shanghai City too much of a discount in the timber trade. The procurement cost was not low either. To put it bluntly, the 2 countries were just the simplest trading partners. They were not even friends, let alone allies. If there was money to be made, the 2 countries would not be lenient. In history, the Southeast Asian countries were once colonies of the Western powers and became the raw material base of the Western powers. By widening the price difference between industrial products and raw materials, the Western powers exploited the colonial labor force and seized a large amount of raw materials. The current Shanghai City was obviously unable to do this. The ASEAN in the game was like a powder keg that could explode at any time. Once the war started, the timber trade would be affected, which would affect the territory's shipbuilding industry. Therefore, the safest way was to completely take down one of the countries through a war. Shanghai City's first target was naturally Annam, which they had a conflict with. There would be a war between the 2 sooner or later. It was just that before the war in Yunnan ended, Shanghai City did not have the energy to start a war. The ASEAN countries were colluding with each other, so they had to consider the whole situation. Once they started a war with Annam, Shanghai City had to be prepared to face the entire ASEAN. Attacking Annam would be a very difficult and systematic war mission. In Gaia's third year, there was no way to put it on the agenda. At the earliest, they would have to wait until Gaia's fourth year. Not to mention the distant war. Even the war in Yunnan was not simple. Whether it was the collaboration between Yunnan City-State and Yanhuang Alliance, or the recent expansion of Xiaonan City-State, Ouyang Shuo was well aware of it through the spies planted in the city-states. Ouyang Shuo was not surprised by Yanhuang Alliance's intervention. Ouyang Shuo also wanted to take this opportunity to compete with the Yanhuang Alliance. He wanted to let Di Chun and the others know what it meant to go for wool and come home shorn. No matter what, the Battle of Yunnan would be even more complicated than the Battle of Lingnan. In the memorial, Yu also mentioned another pillar industry of the territory, the steel industry. Just like the shipbuilding industry, the steel industry was also limited by materials, or more accurately, energy. Until now, there had not been a good solution to the demand for coal in the territory's steel industry. Fallen Phoenix City was located inland, so transportation was lacking. Recently, Ouyang Shuo had already shifted his focus from Taiyuan province to the northern part of the capital and Ludong province, the two second-class coal-producing regions in the country. Compared to the Taiyuan province, where Fallen Phoenix City was located, although the coal output of the two places could not be compared, they had a natural advantage. They were both near the sea and had natural ports within their borders. The coastline of the China region was also long. From north to south, there were more than 10 large natural ports, including Binhai Port in the northern part of the capital, Haijin Port in the southern part, Jiaodong Port in Ludong Province, Haizhou Port and Xinchang Port in Donghai Province, Zhoushan Port in Jiangnan Province, Chuanzhou Port in Minnan Province, and Jiaozhou Port in Lingnan Province. In comparison, the North Sea port of Shanghai City was nothing. The Binhai Port in the northern part of the capital was located in the territory of Hardstone City. Shanghai City's business department was already negotiating with Hardstone City, preparing to establish a stable coal trading channel through the sea. The premise was that Hardstone City had to increase the amount of coal mining in the territory. Mining coal not only required a large amount of manpower, but also equipment and funds. The Bank of the Four Seas provided a special loan of 500,000 gold coins for Hardstone City to expand their coal production. The guarantor of the loan was Shanghai City's finance department. Before they even received a ship of coal, the finance department had already paid 100,000 gold coins in advance. Cui Yingyu, who was in charge of the territory's industry, had even announced that Shanghai City would buy as much coal as Hardstone City mined. In this way, it was a win-win situation between the two territories. Shanghai City obtained the coal that they urgently needed, while Hardstone City obtained precious development funds by selling the coal. There was a saying that went, "Don't put all your eggs in one basket." Other than Hardstone City, Shanghai City also set their sights on the Ludong province. Compared to Hardstone City, the Ludong province was not only larger, but it was also closer to Shanghai City. Today, the entire Ludong province had been occupied by West Chu. Speaking of which, the relationship between the hegemon of Western Chu, Xiangyu, and Ouyang Shuo was a little complicated. During the Battle of Giant Deer, it was the army of Shanghai City that pushed Xiangyu into the abyss. However, a hegemon was still a hegemon. Before Xiangyu committed suicide, he had promised Ouyang Shuo that he owed him a favor. Ouyang Shuo suddenly realized that it was time to make use of this favor. Thinking of this, Ouyang Shuo immediately picked up his pen and sent a letter to Zhang Yi, the Minister of Ceremonies, asking him to arrange a diplomatic group to secretly go to West Chu. It was not only to establish a relationship, but also to open negotiations on the coal trade. The reason why Ouyang Shuo took this matter so seriously was naturally not limited to the coal. He also hoped to use this opportunity to dissolve the estrangement between the two forces, and it would be best if they could establish a closer relationship. For example, forming an alliance. Yanhuang Alliance was always playing dirty tricks, which made Ouyang Shuo annoyed. It was time to find some fun for them, so that they would not participate in the Southern Border War. Ouyang Shuo had heard that the West Chu regime was very powerful, sweeping through the Ludong province and swallowing the Zhangchu regime, becoming the overlord of the Central Plains. However, West Chu was not without weaknesses. The biggest weakness of the West Chu regime was that the people were living in poverty and the economy was weak. The hegemon of Western Chu, Xiangyu, wanted to expand, but he was limited by his financial resources, so he had to give up halfway. As such, Ouyang Shuo did not mind giving him a hand. Ouyang Shuo believed that Xiangyu would be very interested in the goodwill of Shanghai City. West Chu maintained a strong position in the Central Plains, threatening Di Chen's capital city in the north and Warwolf's East Sea province in the south. It was an important existence. With such a regime, Di Chen and Warwolf would not be able to run around. Other than the West Chu regime, Ouyang Shu also instructed the Chamberlain of Dependencies, with the cooperation of the Shanghai Guards, to make more contact with the aristocratic families in the Hunan province. Maintaining a chaotic Hunan province was the most in line with Shanghai City's interests. The same logic was also applicable to the complicated Central Plains province. Without a doubt, with the rise of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, Shanghai City would use diplomatic means to realize their interests, to balance their enemies, and to make friends. Sun Tzu said, "The first is to attack the enemy, the second is to attack the enemy, the third is to attack the enemy, and the last is to attack the city." It could be foreseen that Shanghai City's path of attacking the enemy would become more and more important in the future. By the time Ouyang Shuo finished writing the secret letter, it was already late at night, and all was silent. The stacks of memorials on the table had all been read. At the end of each one was Ouyang Shuo's handwriting. The next morning, these memorials would be sent back to the Southern Border Protectorate. Ouyang Shuo put down his brush, leaned his hands back, cracked his neck, and stretched his body. Suddenly, his body let out a crackling sound. It could be seen that he had been sitting for too long. Although it was hard, Ouyang Shuo felt very fulfilled, seeing his territory becoming stronger step by step under his guidance. This sense of accomplishment could not be compared to anything. After leaving the study and returning to his bedroom, Ouyang Shuo began to cultivate as usual. As the Yellow Emperor's internal scripture broke through to the 11th level, the golden true yuan in Ouyang Shuo's body was like a surging river, surging violently. One could see how powerful the true yuan was. The dantian of his abdomen had already expanded into a golden spring. The golden true yuan was like spring water rolling up and down in the mouth of the spring. It was a spectacular sight. After the fortuitous encounter on the Dragon Island, the meridians in his body had become extremely tough. Under the continuous erosion of the golden true yuan, they even had a faint golden luster. Even the bones in his body had started to be dyed golden. According to the records of the Yellow Emperor's internal scripture, once the meridians in the body turned golden, it was the sign of reaching the 11th level. After reaching the 12th level, all the bones in the body would turn golden. Unfortunately, it had been more than 5 months since the Yellow Emperor's internal scripture broke through to the 11th level. Ouyang Shuo cultivated day and night, but the progress was still slow. According to the current progress, he didn't know how long it would take for him to break through to the 11th level. Even so, Ouyang Shuo didn't have a trace of impatience. He cultivated step by step every day. He believed that the little bit of accumulation would eventually lead to success. Cultivation was originally about cultivating the mind. One had to be able to endure the loneliness, but also be able to keep calm and endure the torment. Since he started cultivating the Yellow Emperor's internal scripture, the first 10 levels had been smooth sailing. He either had the help of natural treasures or had a fortuitous encounter. Now that he had reached this step, it was time for him to temper himself. Hence, Ouyang Shuo wasn't anxious at all. To Ouyang Shuo, daily cultivation was a kind of enjoyment in itself. The next morning, Ouyang Shuo began to pack his luggage and prepared to rush to the next county. At this moment, a guard came to report, "Lord, there's a strange woman outside the courtyard requesting to see you. She said she has something to report." Strange woman? Ouyang Shuo frowned. According to the rules of the wilderness, after a territory falls, the players living in the territory would be teleported to the capital. Hence, along the way, Ouyang Shuo rarely saw players. Needless to say, there would be players who would take the initiative to look for him. At Ouyang Shuo's position, there weren't many players who could talk to him directly. Ouyang Shuo asked, "What's the woman's name?" Chapter 748. My lord, she calls herself Wu Qingcheng, the guard answered. Wu Qingcheng. Ouyang Shuo's eyes narrowed. China's players were no strangers to Wu Qingcheng. Among the top 10 beauties in China, Wu Qingcheng was ranked 5th. It was said that she was devastatingly beautiful. In reality, Wu Qingcheng was a superstar, a top movie star that was famous throughout the world. What was even rarer was that not only could Wu Qingcheng act in movies, she was also a famous director and had her own studio. In the game, this superstar lost her usefulness and gradually faded from the sight of players. The only thing people remembered about her was her peerless looks. It was because she was not prominent in the game that Wu Qingcheng's ranking was not high. In terms of appearance alone, Wu Qingcheng could definitely be ranked in the top 3. She was on par with Feng Qiuhuang and peerless elegance. Ouyang Shuo, who had been reborn, had a different impression of Wu Qingcheng. Ouyang Shuo clearly remembered that in the 4th year of Gaia, Wu Qingcheng had made her first in-game movie, Country and Beauty. It instantly became popular throughout the country, and the number of paid viewers on the forums exceeded 20 million. All the scenes in Country and Beauty were shot in-game. It was beautiful and did not require any post-production. The actors were all professional gamers, and they were all in action. There was no need for stunt doubles or special effects. Even the costumes and props were real in-game equipment or custom-made by top professional gamers. It was exquisite and had a strong visual impact. The filming equipment was specially requested by Wu Qingcheng from Gaia. It was a highly intelligent camera elf that was better than the filming equipment in real life. Together with the excellent script and excellent editing, it was impossible for Country and Beauty not to become popular. Of course, the most important factor was Gaia's support. Other than the exclusive camera elf, Gaia had opened a new viewing section on the forums. In this section, players would be placed in an exclusive virtual space after paying. They would enjoy a 5D viewing experience that was similar to virtual reality. It was even better than the cinema in real life. Gaia's actions were not specifically targeting Wu Qingcheng. Their true goal was to use this as an opportunity to enrich the entertainment lives of gamers. After all, gamers around the world had to live in the game for 10 years. It would be unimaginable if they did not have entertainment. Wu Qingcheng's appearance was coincidental. Before filming, Wu Qingcheng was probably very nervous. She never imagined that it would become so popular. Even if it was a movie made in the game, the cost was not really zero. Hiring more than a dozen main actors, thousands of extras, and manufacturing thousands of costumes and props had cost 600,000 to 700,000 gold coins. The filming cost of the entire movie was around 1 million gold coins. Wu Qingcheng's risk had finally paid off. With just this one movie, Wu Qingcheng earned millions of gold coins. She even made it to the top of China's celebrity rankings. Her fame was boundless. The popularity of the beauty of the country and country was the prelude to the rise of the gaming and entertainment industry. In the second half of the 4th year of Gaia, the entire game and movie industry experienced a boom. The scale of the industry exceeded 10 million gold coins. It could be said that this was an unexplored blue sea. Looking at the time, the beauty of country and country should be in the middle of filming. Thinking of this, the corners of Ouyang Shuo's mouth curled into a smile. He had roughly guessed why Wu Qingcheng would appear in Xingning County and why she would anxiously look for him. Ask her to wait in the side hall, Ouyang Shuo instructed. Yes, sir. In the side hall, Wu Qingcheng held a cup of tea and frowned. Deep down, Wu Qingcheng was a very prideful person. The arrival of the apocalypse, interstellar migration, virtual games, and a series of sudden changes had completely disrupted the rhythm of her life. When she entered the game, Wu Qingcheng suddenly realized that she had nothing to do. In the game, she was no longer a celebrity who attracted attention. She was mediocre. The real celebrities in the game were top-notch professional gamers or lords of the wilderness. A celebrity in real life, no matter how beautiful she was, would not be interested in her. Before entering On the Earth, Wu Qingcheng had never played any games. In her memory, other than work, there was only work. Every move she made was under the spotlight. After 2 years of silence, Wu Qingcheng could no longer hold it in. She wanted to do something, and the only thing she was good at was making movies. When Gaia activated the time limit for the exchange of achievement points, Wu Qingcheng gritted her teeth and exchanged a large amount of achievement points for game gold coins. She raised a total of 500,000 gold coins. As a top-notch movie star, Wu Qingcheng's achievement points were not low, but they were definitely not high either. With this exchange, there was no turning back. Following that, Wu Qingcheng began to gather the studio members in real life and rebuilt Qingcheng Studio in the game. She began to write the script and plan the possibility of making a movie in the game. However, the early stages were not smooth. Most of the studio members did not believe that making a movie in the game could make money, so they all rejected Wu Qingcheng's request. Even so, Wu Qingcheng gritted her teeth and persevered. The rise of electronic newspapers in the game had truly allowed Wu Qingcheng to see the light of hope. Finally, with the introduction of a real-life friend, Wu Qingcheng and the Lord of Xingning County reached an agreement to invest in country and beauty. Xingning County invested 100,000 gold coins and provided the filming location. Other than that, Xingning County also provided assistance in terms of weapons, equipment, skills, and talents. Without these, the movie could not even be started. Stumbling about, everything was ready, and the movie finally started shooting. Unexpectedly, disaster suddenly fell from the sky. In less than a month, Xingning County was captured by Shanghai City. The Lord of Xingning County was teleported to the capital and could not fulfill his promise. The entire movie was put on hold. Wu Qingcheng felt despair. Especially during the war, the entire production team was almost destroyed by the Shanghai City army. After the war ended, they were constantly being interrogated. It was almost impossible to restart the filming of the movie. The previous investment was about to go down the drain, and the actors that they had painstakingly hired all terminated their contracts. The production team was about to be dismissed. At this moment, there was unexpected news of Hiyu Wui patrolling Chaozhou County. Wu Qingcheng was like a drowning person who saw a glimmer of hope in the midst of despair. That was why she paid him a visit today. She did not know what effect today's conversation would have. Half an hour later, Ouyang Shuo arrived at the side hall. Lord Wui, I've heard so much about you. For some reason, when she saw the young man walking slowly into the hall, Wu Qingcheng felt an inexplicable sense of nervousness. The man in front of her was about the same age as her. His face was chiseled and handsome, but his expression was indifferent. It was neither warm nor unapproachable. There was not a trace of aggressive aura on him. For some reason, Wu Qingcheng felt flustered. In real life, Wu Qingcheng was an international superstar. She had seen all kinds of situations, but at this moment, she lost her sense of propriety. The man in front of her was like an unfathomable ocean. Even the big shots in real life did not give Wu Qingcheng such a strong sense of oppression. Wu Qingcheng felt more and more uncertain. Miss Qingcheng, I've long heard your great name. I'm a loyal fan of yours. Ouyang Shuo lightly smiled and sat down on the seat of honor. Is that so? Wu Qingcheng's eyes lit up, but her expression turned gloomy. Unfortunately, I'm already past my prime. As a top-notch actress, Wu Qingcheng was good at grasping the tiniest of expressions. Every frown and smile was enough to make one's heart flutter. Ouyang Shuo was unmoved. He smiled and said, "How is it past my prime? In my opinion, the movie industry has great potential in the game industry." Time was precious. Ouyang Shuo did not want to beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Do you really think so? Wu Qingcheng was really surprised. This was the first time that someone had the same opinion as her. Even the previous Lord of Xingning County had only agreed to it because he coveted her beauty and had ulterior motives. During the filming, Wu Qingcheng was harassed quite a bit. Even so, Wu Qingcheng did not give up. She defused the other party's attacks while speeding up the filming. Such professionalism was commendable. Of course. Ouyang Shua nodded. Wu Qingcheng glanced at him. Seeing that he did not seem to be lying, she gradually became more confident. She also knew that a man of his status would not stoop to lying. Using this as an excuse, Wu Qingcheng told him all the difficulties she had encountered. You want Shanghai City to take over? Ouyang Shua asked. Wu Qingcheng nodded. If we can reshoot the movie, I'm willing to give up another 10% of the profits. As she spoke, she passed the cooperation agreement she had signed with the Lord of Xingning County to Ouyang Shua. The agreement she had signed with the Lord of Xingning County was a 60-40 split. Giving up 10% of the profits meant that the profit would be square. For this movie, Wu Qingcheng had invested 500,000 gold coins. If the profits did not reach her expectations, she would go bankrupt. Giving up 10% of the profits required a lot of determination and sincerity. Ouyang Shua took the agreement and skimmed through it. How is it? Wu Qingcheng was a little nervous. Ouyang Shua shook his head. This is already the biggest concession I can make. Wu Qingcheng frowned, and her face gradually turned pale. She did not expect the other party to be such a greedy person. He had forced her to the edge of the cliff. Ouyang Shua smiled as if he had seen through Wu Qingcheng's thoughts. He said, I think you misunderstood. What do you mean? Shanghai City has occupied Xingning County. As the Lord, you have the responsibility to defend your territory. Naturally, you will accept all the old debts. The agreement you signed with Xingning County will be carried out in its entirety. Really? Wu Qingcheng was overjoyed. Ouyang Shua smiled and said nothing. Thank you so much. Wu Qingcheng stood up excitedly and wanted to shake his hand to express her gratitude. Seeing that he had no intention of doing so, she awkwardly sat back down. She could not hide the excitement on her face. It was not that Ouyang Shua was arrogant, but he was used to the etiquette in reality. Shake hands? No one dared to do that to him. Ouyang Shua smiled and dissolved the awkwardness. He asked, I have a suggestion. I wonder if you're interested? Chapter 749. What is it? I'm all ears. Wu Qingcheng immediately relaxed after resolving the biggest problem, and she started to laugh and talk. Ouyang Shua asked, I'm very optimistic about the video game industry and would like to find a professional to cooperate with. Are you interested? Ouyang Shua had no reason to let go of the video game industry. How could investing in a movie satisfy his appetite? His goal was to develop the entertainment industry and become a big shot in the entertainment industry. Glamorous Studio was the first target that Ouyang Shua had set his eyes on. Wu Qingcheng's eyes were filled with wariness. You want to buy my studio? Wu Qingcheng was no stranger to mergers and acquisitions in real life. Now that the other party held the lifeline of country and beauty, it was hard to reject. Glamour Studio was Wu Qingcheng's lifeline. She would not allow anyone to touch it, not even Shanghai City. Wu Qingcheng had already made up her mind to fail. It's not a takeover. Ouyang Shua shook his head. It's a capital injection. I want to inject 200,000 gold coins into Glamour Studio in my own name. I want 40% of the shares, and I won't interfere with the studio's operations. Shanghai City would also be able to provide support in various aspects when it came to filming. Not to mention, the Bank of the Four Seas is more than happy to provide a loan for Glamour Studios' next movie. How about it? Are you interested? Ouyang Shua's conditions were not harsh. He knew how to achieve a win-win situation and only wanted to make the cake bigger. He didn't want to reap short-term profits before the peach was ripe. Wu Qingcheng's heart thumped when she heard that. She realized that a huge opportunity was right in front of her. Even in the video game industry, the movie industry was a money-burning industry. Wu Qingcheng couldn't afford a single movie even if she invested all her money. She needed to find a partner. If Country and Beauty couldn't recover its capital, Glamour Studio would declare bankruptcy. Therefore, the best way was to find a big shot to cooperate with. Without a doubt, Shanghai City was the biggest player in the China region. Shanghai City was not only the biggest shareholder of the Bank of the Four Seas, but they were also very powerful. More importantly, they could provide all the necessary facilities for filming. Most importantly, they weren't greedy. They didn't try to control the studio and promised not to interfere with the studio's operations. Clearly, this was purely an investment. In the wilderness, there was no better partner than Shanghai City. In the past, Wu Qingcheng had fantasized about cooperating with Shanghai City, but unfortunately, she couldn't even enter the royal city. If it wasn't for the fact that Ouyang Shua's image in the outside world was that he didn't care about women and had even cruelly rejected the love of Feng Xiuhuang, Bai Hua, and the other top goddesses, Wu Qingcheng would have really thought that he had some ulterior motives towards her. I agree. Wu Qingcheng nodded without hesitation. Even if there was a huge pit in front of her, she still had to jump in. The opportunity is fleeting. Wu Qingcheng was a decisive woman. Straightforward. Ouyang Shua nodded. That's all for today. Someone will contact you later. Ouyang Shua had no intention of personally managing the entertainment industry. He wanted to hand it over to Song Jia. Apart from investing in City Toppling Studio, Ouyang Shua would also take out another 800,000 gold coins to recruit more big shots in the entertainment industry. A one-time investment amounted to 1,000,000 gold coins. In this way, the funds in Ouyang Shua's possession shrank once more, and he was only left with 5,000,000 gold coins. But if he really wanted to operate the entertainment industry, 1,000,000 gold coins seemed somewhat insignificant. In order to not use up too much liquidity, the best way was to proceed step by step. He would first invest in 2 or 3 movies, and then use the profits to expand the scale of the business. The matters in the middle were complicated. Ouyang Shua believed that with Song Jia's ability, she would definitely be able to handle it well. After Wu Qingcheng left, Ouyang Shua sent a letter to Song Jia, explaining the matter in detail. At the same time, he also transferred 1,000,000 gold coins to Song Jia. From now on, Song Jia would take over the matters of following the filming of Beauty of the Country and Rivers and investing in City Toppling Studio. Ouyang Shua was looking forward to an unimaginable entertainment industry that would completely explode in the next 2 years, bringing in a huge amount of cash for Shanghai City. After the interlude, Ouyang Shua and his group set off again. And just as Ouyang Shua was pacifying the 3 counties of Lingnan, the dormant leopard army finally made a move. October 20th, South Sichuan Province's Guilin County, Xuanwu Pass. A year ago, the city-state of Northern Sichuan and the city-state of Xiangnan joined hands. While the army of Shanghai City was stalled by the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, they brazenly dispatched their troops and occupied Guilin County. Guilin County was the northern barrier of South Sichuan Province, and also the northern barrier. Its strategic location was extremely important. The only passageways connecting the south were Guiping Pass and Xuanwu Pass. In the battle to defend the pass, Guiping Pass was eventually defended by Shanghai City's army. Later, it was expanded into the Withered Fortress and became the headquarters of the Leopard Army. The other pass, Xuanwu Pass, was unfortunately occupied by the Allied forces until now. Today, Xuanwu Pass had been impregnated by the Allied forces. And on this day, Anbei General Zhang Han led the Second Corps of the Leopard Army and slowly approached the fortress. The Leopard Army was responsible for guarding the northern border, and its commander, Han Xian, personally led the First Corps to guard the Withered Fortress. The Second Corps, led by Zhang Han, set up a permanent camp near Xuanwu Pass to monitor the Allied forces. During the year of confrontation, the Second Corps and the Xuanwu Pass had constant conflicts and friction. Unfortunately, Xuanwu Pass was an impregnable pass guarded by 50,000 Allied forces, making it difficult for them to take it down. As such, the Allied forces at the pass remained unmoved even when they saw the Second Corps of Shanghai City launching another attack. It wasn't surprising that the other party would launch such an operation once a month. Look, they're here again. Haha, bunch of fools. They're asking for it. The Allied forces on the walls of the pass mocked the Allied forces. At the center of the Second Corps, Zhang Han was riding on a horse, staring at the pass not too far away with a complicated expression. It had been a year. The Second Corps had endured for an entire year. It's finally time to end this, Zhang Han muttered to himself. With a wave of Zhang Han's flag, the Central Army slowly retreated, revealing 32 elite steeds pulling 8 cold cannons at the forefront of the formation. These cannons weren't cannons of the Ming Dynasty, but a modified version of the 7th Research Institute, codenamed P1. Compared to the cumbersome cannons of the Ming Dynasty, the P1 cannon had been greatly improved. Most importantly, the barrel, frame, and other components have been replaced with cast iron. Not only did this greatly reduce the chances of the cannons exploding, it also reduced the weight of the cannons by 50%. The problem with the high industrialization rate was the low conformity rate of the P1 cannons, resulting in a severe shortage of production capacity. Currently, they could only produce a dozen or so P1 cannons that met the requirements every month. The main problem was that the industrialization of the territory had only just begun, and the technological level was still too low. Most of the components couldn't be machined, so they had to be polished manually. Not only was it time-consuming, but the precision wasn't high either. The second change was the resetting of the frame system. The Ming Dynasty cannons were made of 2-wheeled carts, making it inconvenient to transport them. For this reason, the 7th Research Institute specially combined the latest industrialization results to create an all-steel 4-wheeled carriage for the P1 cannon. The wheels of the carriage were also specially designed, making them twice as wide as normal wheels. At the same time, they were equipped with a gear system. With 4 steeds, they could easily move a cannon, greatly increasing the mobility of the cannon. Of course, due to the lack of rubber tires, the carriage still had its flaws. Not only could it not keep up with the steeds, but it could also easily get bogged down in rainy weather and muddy roads. Moreover, they were on a main road. If they were marching in the wilderness, it would be even worse. They wouldn't even be able to cross a small hill or a ditch, let alone a mountain or a swamp. To transport the 8 cannons from Shanghai City to the 2nd Division's camp, the combat department took a full month, and they suffered a lot along the way. Once the cannons got bogged down, it was almost impossible to drag them out. There were a total of 12 cannons transported from Shanghai City, but only 8 reached the front line. The remaining 4 were scrapped during the transport. Because of this, the P1 cannon didn't even have a chance to be used in the Battle of Lingnan. The third change was the essence of the P1 cannon. After Liu Mo and the others' research, combining the advantages of the Spanish and British cannons, the P1 cannon finally achieved projectile firing, achieving a historic breakthrough. This way, not only did it increase the range of the cannon, but it also made it possible to bombard the top of the city, or even inside the city. Cannons were no longer useless for sieging a city. They could only bombard the city gates. The P1 cannon was more of a siege weapon, and its first target was Xianwu Pass. At the same time, in order to complement the projectile firing, the P1 cannon was also equipped with a special aiming device, greatly increasing the accuracy of the cannon. It was no longer dependent on the experience of the gunner. In order to calibrate the aiming device that matched the P1 cannon, the 7th Research Institute conducted thousands of bombardment tests outside the city, collecting the original orbital data bit by bit before the final product was completed. The 3 changes mentioned above were only the P1 cannon, which was the biggest improvement compared to the Frang machine cannon of the Ming Dynasty. There were more than 20 other small modifications, each of which was the blood and sweat of the researchers. As the Atlantis mimic aircraft manufacturing technology was slowly digested by the 7th Research Institute, coupled with the help of Industrial Revolution products such as steam engines and textile machines, the territory's industrialization level was expected to reach a new level by the end of the year. By then, the 7th Research Institute would start the research on the P2 cannon. It was conceivable that the P2 cannon would be the real killing machine, and it might even change the way of war, truly introducing firearms into cold weapons and play a decisive role. The current P1 cannon was just a small test. Even so, it was more than enough to give Xianwu Pass a hard time. With the help of this cannon, Zhang Han was confident that he would be able to take down the pass within a day and wash away his previous humiliation. Chapter 750. What's that? Upon seeing the Type 1 cannon, the Allied army was dumbfounded. The smooth lines of the cannon, the cold metallic hue, and the intricate frame were completely different from the cannons in the legends. The only response they received was the rumbling of the cannon. Zhang Han didn't waste any time. As soon as the cannon was in position, he immediately launched a fierce and swift attack. Boom, boom, boom. The cannonballs drew beautiful arcs in the air before accurately striking the defenders on the walls and exploding. In an instant, the soldiers of the Allied army who were mocking the Second Corps just a moment ago were blasted into smithereens. Even the battlements at the top of the walls were blasted apart. What followed next was a relentless barrage of cannons. The entire top of the walls were swept clean by the cannons. Blood and flesh splattered all over the place, and smoke filled the air. The archers of the Allied army wanted to retaliate, but Zhang Han was prepared for this. Every single cannon was guarded by a battalion of saber and shield soldiers, using their shields to ensure the safety of the cannoneers. As for the cannons themselves, they weren't affected by the archers at all. The only weapons capable of destroying the cannons were catapults and ballistae, but it was a pity that the range of those two weapons couldn't compare to that of the cannons. This meant that the Allied army couldn't retaliate at all. "General, we can't go on like this." The Allied army didn't dare to show their heads on the walls at all. Their morale had plummeted to rock bottom. Damn it, what kind of weird weapon is the enemy using? Regardless of what weapon they're using, it's clear that they came prepared this time. They're really intending to take down the pass. Dream on. Why don't we just charge out? Someone suggested. "General, let me do it. I guarantee that we'll be able to kill those ugly monsters," a ferocious soldier volunteered. Seeing the heavy losses, the defending army couldn't sit still anymore. Speaking of which, the defending army could be considered as a semi-famous general under Yuan Shao during the Three Kingdoms era, Yan Liang. In history, Yan Liang was indeed killed by Guan Yu, and in the novel, he was a tragic character. As one of the top generals under Yuan Shao, Yan Liang was known for his bravery, so he wasn't to be underestimated. A year ago, after taking down Guilin County, North Sichuan City and South Xiangnan City had a division of labor. North Sichuan City State was responsible for guarding the Xuanwu Pass in the west, while South Xiangnan City State was responsible for guarding the new pass opposite the Withered Fortress in the east. Yan Liang was a valiant general under the command of the northern Sichuan City-State's Tycoon Shiman. He had just been stationed at Xuanwu Pass a month ago as the general guarding the pass when he encountered such an unforeseen event. The situation was clear. If they did not destroy the enemy's cannons, they had no chance of winning this battle. Yan Liang was a valiant general and did not have many schemes. Hearing his subordinate's advice, he clenched his teeth and decided to use the method he was best at. "Fang Jin, here." A valiant young general received the order and stepped out with a bang, his battle intent overflowing. Regardless of whether it was for the sake of face or other considerations, each territory had sent their elites into the Allied army. Even if the leading generals were not historical generals, they would still be wild tiger generals like Zhao Sihu. It wasn't their style to be afraid before the battle began. In the eyes of the generals, no matter how strong the enemy's cannons were, they only had 8 of them. There was no reason to say that the dignified alliance army of 50,000 would be frightened by a mere 8 cannons. How would it look if word got out? Yan Liang ordered, "Lead 5,000 elite cavalry out of the city and destroy the enemy's cannons." Since it was a surprise attack, it wasn't appropriate to send in a large force. 5,000 elite cavalry was more than enough to accomplish the mission. Just this point alone was enough to show Yan Liang's rich experience in leading troops. "Yes." Fang Jin clasped his fist. "If you don't destroy the cannons, I'll bring my head to you." "Go." Yan Liang waved his hand. Fang Jin nodded and left. Amidst the roar of the cannons, Fang Jin led his 5,000 elite cavalry and charged out. Upon seeing this, Zhang Han's lips curled into a cold sneer. "I've been waiting for you. Archers, get ready." Whoosh! More than 10,000 archers suddenly appeared behind the sword-and-shield soldiers. Fire! As soon as the cavalry entered their firing range, a rain of arrows came raining down. In an instant, innumerable arrows were fired, and the first row of cavalry was thrown into a complete mess. Fire again. By the time the first volley was done, the cavalry had already advanced 50 to 60 meters. The second row of archers received the order and changed to a straight shot. Another round of ferocious firepower was unleashed. At the same time, the 8 cannons also aimed at the enemy cavalry and exploded in the midst of the formation. This was the first time the warhorses had heard such a loud explosion, and they were frightened out of their wits. In just 2 volleys, more than half of the 5,000 elite cavalrymen had been killed. Charge! Fong Jin charged at the very front with a fervent look on his face. As expected of a cavalry, they were able to make use of this short interval to close in on the cannons with just 2 volleys of attacks. Even though the P1 cannons had been modified, they were still unable to retreat from the battlefield in an instant. Fong Jin looked at the cannons before him in excitement. As long as they could destroy the enemy's cannons, it would be worth it even if they sacrificed all of their cavalry. Without the cannons, it would be impossible for the enemy to take down Xuanwu Pass. It was then that the cannons stopped firing and the archers retreated. The 8 sword and shield soldiers who were guarding the cannons swiftly got into formation in front of the cannons to form the first line of defense, following which the spearmen followed suit to form the second line of defense. At the same time, 2 groups of cavalry suddenly charged out from the left and right flanks, piercing right into the enemy's formation. Upon seeing this, Fong Jin's eyes narrowed. The quality of Shanghai City's army had far exceeded Fong Jin's expectations. In just a short period of time, they were able to change their formation so efficiently and perfectly. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water, without the slightest hindrance. Fong Jin couldn't help but think about how many drills the Second Corps had conducted in order to take down Xuanwu Pass. Just the actual combat drills alone numbered more than 10. Given Zhang Han's capabilities, he was able to take into account the various reactions of the Allied army and come up with a corresponding battle formation. On the battlefield, all he had to do was to repeat the drills that he had practiced previously. How could such a meticulous plan possibly fail? This was the secret behind why famous generals were known as famous generals, let alone a top-notch one like Zhang Han. His preparations for the battle were so meticulous that it made one's hair stand on end. Every single detail had been taken into consideration. On top of that, how could Yin Liang and the others compare to him? The sword and shield soldiers, spearmen, and light cavalrymen formed a killing formation that easily trapped the remaining cavalrymen of the Allied army. In less than an hour, the remaining cavalrymen were wiped out. Under the joint attack from 3 sides, the 5,000 elite cavalrymen were forced to retreat without accomplishing anything. On top of the city walls, Yin Liang and the other commanders watched helplessly as their cavalrymen were surrounded and killed. Their faces were filled with indignation. Amidst their indignation was a hint of horror. Is this the true strength of Shanghai City's army? The faces of some of the commanders paled. It was as if they had fallen into an elaborate trap. No matter how hard they struggled, it was all futile. A sense of helplessness welled up in their hearts. Damn it! Yin Liang's complexion was awful, and he was clearly flustered. Born in the Three Kingdoms era, Yin Liang had never been educated in modern technology, so he knew nothing about cannons. No matter how courageous he was, he had no choice but to lower his head before such a monster. The 50,000 soldiers of the Allied army stationed at Xuanwu Pass were mainly infantrymen, and there were only 10,000 cavalrymen left. With the loss of 5,000 elite cavalrymen, it was impossible for the remaining cavalrymen to accomplish anything. As for arranging for an infantryman assault, Yin Liang had no confidence in that at all. Yin Liang wasn't a fool. He could tell from the enemy's formation that they had come prepared. No matter what the Allied army did, the enemy would have a way to deal with it. In fact, as long as the Allied army left the city to fight, they would have already lost strategically. The 50,000 Allied army was able to withstand the attack of the enemy's 70,000 soldiers because of Xuanwu Pass. Once they left the pass, it would be difficult for them to win no matter how hard they struggled. The only difference was the number of casualties the enemy would have to pay. In other words, with the cannons, the enemy was already in an invincible position. On the other hand, the Allied army seemed to have no chance of winning. After figuring out the cause and effect, Yin Liang felt even more aggrieved. During the Three Kingdoms era, Yin Liang had never fought such a cowardly battle to defend a city. Every siege during the Three Kingdoms era had been won with the sacrifice of human lives. A situation like this, where one could remain invincible with just one superior weapon, did not exist. Facing the current situation, Yin Liang felt somewhat helpless. He was at his wit's end. Yin Liang looked around and asked, "Does anyone have a good plan to defeat the enemy?" When the commanders heard this, they looked at each other. They no longer had the passion and fighting spirit from before. They weren't fools. What Yin Liang could understand, they could roughly understand as well. In the current situation, it was impossible to destroy the enemy's cannons. Defending to the death was also not a solution. The only plan now was to withdraw the troops. Otherwise, they would be buried with Xianwu Pass. The problem was that all the commanders present understood the importance of Xianwu Pass. Once they lost Xianwu Pass, not to mention the punishment of the city-state, even their respective lords wouldn't spare them. Thus, no one was willing to say the sensitive word withdraw. Everyone present was a shrewd person. No one was willing to take the blame. Seeing this, Yin Liang's temper became even more fiery. He wished he could give each of them a kick. But these commanders weren't his trusted aides, so he couldn't flare up. Taking 10,000 steps back, as the general defending the pass, there were some responsibilities that he couldn't escape. Gritting his teeth, Yin Liang gave the order to withdraw. Since no one has a good plan, let's return to Wei Wu Pass first. We'll make plans after reporting to the headquarters. The Wei Wu Pass that Yin Liang spoke of was a temporary pass that the city-state had built on the side of Guilin County. It was to provide an extra layer of insurance in case Xianwu Pass was lost. Now it seemed that the Wei Wu Pass was indeed built correctly. It gave the Allied army a chance to breathe. When the commanders heard that the troops were to be withdrawn, they quietly breathed a sigh of relief. When Yin Liang saw this, a cold smile flashed across his lips. In a situation where the enemy was fiercely attacking Xianwu Pass, coupled with the rugged mountain road, it was extremely easy for the enemy to catch up. If they really wanted to withdraw, they had to arrange for the rear troops. Who should we arrange to bring up the rear? Yin Liang looked at the commanders with a sinister look in his eyes. Chapter 751. Yin Liang found 2 scapegoats to guard Xuanwu Pass while the rest of the army retreated to Wei Wu Pass. Under the bombardment of the cannons, Xuanwu Pass was lifeless and lifeless. The abnormality of the Allied army was soon noticed by the Second Corps. "General, something's wrong. Did the enemy retreat?" Zhang Han was also puzzled. After thinking for a moment, he decisively ordered, "Bombard the gate and prepare to attack." "Yes, sir." Amidst the rumbling of the cannons, the gate was breached. The vast army surged into Xuanwu Pass like a black tide, but there were only 5,000 defenders. The 2 scapegoats did not have the courage to die a martyr's death. Seeing that the enemy was charging into the pass, they decisively chose to surrender. They answered Zhang Han's questions without any hesitation. Knowing that the main force of the Allied army had retreated, Zhang Han immediately ordered, "Chen Yuqing, here." A young general stepped out. He was one of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom's peerless geniuses, Chen Yuqing. Chen Yuqing was brave in battle and had a high level of comprehension. He was deeply trusted and liked by Zhang Han, who did not hesitate to impart all his knowledge to him. This young general had already grown into a cornerstone of the Second Corps. Ouyang Shuo had already instructed the other commanders to focus on nurturing these young generals with potential, whether it was Chen Yuqing or Li Xiuqing, who was under Di Qing's command, to help them grow. This was especially so for Li Xiuqing, Chen Yuqing, and the other generals of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom, who were born in the Qing dynasty, who were familiar with firearms. They were the best candidates to form a special firearms unit in the future. "I'll have you lead 5,000 elite cavalrymen in pursuit. Remember, don't be greedy for achievements. Turn back before we reach Weiwu Pass, Zhang Han ordered. Yes, sir. Chen Yuqing cupped his fists and left. Soon, 5,000 elite cavalrymen charged out of Xuanwu Pass and pursued the enemy. Zhang Han led his men to take over Xuanwu Pass, detain the surrendered generals, and clean up the battlefield. At the same time, he drafted a battle report and submitted it to Han Exine, the commander of the Baotao army, and waited for further instructions. Chen Yuqing had just reached the middle of the pursuit when he discovered the allied army that was rapidly retreating. Kill! Without hesitation, Chen Yuqing led his men over. There was only a rugged mountain road connecting the two passes. The mountain road was narrow, no more than 3 or 4 meters wide. The 40,000 allied troops formed a long line. The front army had already entered the mighty pass, but the rear army was still halfway there. Yin Liang was not completely unprepared for Chen Yuqing's ambush. Other than leaving 5,000 soldiers to guard Xuanwu Pass, Yin Liang had also arranged for troops to bring up the rear. However, Yin Liang had underestimated Zhang Han's decisiveness. As soon as he noticed that something was amiss, Zhang Han immediately issued the order to attack the pass. Then, as soon as he received the news, he ordered his elite cavalrymen to pursue the enemy. Even so, the rear army was still caught off guard. On the narrow mountain road, the soldiers who were responsible for bringing up the rear were pierced through by the cavalrymen led by Chen Yuqing before they could get into formation. They were utterly defeated. Looking from the sky, Chen Yuqing's 5,000 elite cavalrymen were like a sharp arrow that pierced into the coalition army's formation from the rear. Then, they pierced all the way to the end like skewers. Wherever the cavalrymen passed, be it the soldiers with shields or spears, they were either trampled to death or pierced through by the cavalrymen's spears. Most of them were pushed to the foothills on both sides by the cavalrymen and fell to the ground. The situation was extremely chaotic. Chen Yuqing was very smart. He didn't pursue the number of enemies he could kill. There was only one thought in his mind: charge, and charge again. He would completely scatter the enemy and crush their will. Visibility was very limited on the narrow mountain road. The soldiers at the rear were scared out of their wits by the cavalrymen's charge. They had no idea how many enemies there were. All they knew was that they just kept charging forward. Run! The enemy is coming. The first soldier threw down his supplies and ran forward like a rabbit. How many people are coming? The second soldier asked. The first soldier replied, At least 5,000. What 5,000? At least 10,000. The third soldier swore. So many? Let's run for our lives. The second soldier was so scared that his face turned pale. He threw down his supplies and ran for his life. The soldiers were like a bunch of frightened rabbits, running forward with all their might. Panic was like dominoes spreading to the front. During this process, the number of enemies kept snowballing. First, it was 5,000, then 10,000, then 20,000, and finally 100,000 soldiers. 100,000? The enemy's corps only has 70,000 soldiers. Where did they get 100,000? The second soldier questioned. The third soldier swore again. You don't understand. Shanghai City has more than one second corps. Brother, you're right. When a soldier heard this, he didn't care whether it was reasonable or not. In any case, there was nothing wrong with escaping into the mighty pass. The army that had yet to enter the pass was in chaos. There were countless bad things like stampedes, gang fights, betrayals, and so on. Just the number of soldiers who were trampled to death by their own people was no less than 500. Yin Liang, who had already entered the pass, realized that something was wrong. He asked, What's going on? Reporting to General, the enemy is coming, the Deputy General reported. How many people are coming? Why are they panicking like this? 10, 100,000, the Deputy General stammered. He couldn't make up his mind whether he should believe this information or not. The problem was that all the soldiers who had escaped into the pass claimed that there were as many as 100,000 enemies. All of them swore solemnly and had sincere expressions on their faces. Their sincerity was so great that if the officer said, I don't believe, they would jump off the city wall to prove their innocence. Smack! A crisp sound rang out. The hot-tempered Yin Liang finally couldn't hold it in any longer and lashed out with his whip, beating the deputy general until his face was swollen. Bastard! 100,000 soldiers? Are you kidding me? How can you believe this? Yin Liang wasn't a fool. He didn't believe that the enemy would be stupid enough to send 100,000 soldiers to attack on the narrow mountain road. Wasn't that asking for trouble? The deputy general's stupidity completely ignited Yin Liang's anger. Please forgive me, General. The deputy general didn't dare to argue and knelt on the ground, trembling with fear. Idiot! Yin Liang couldn't bear to see such a coward and kicked him again. Scram! After teaching the deputy general a lesson, Yin Liang ascended the city wall and looked toward the mountain road. His expression instantly turned solemn. On the long mountain road, the Allied army was in complete chaos. The enemy cavalry galloped wantonly on the mountain road, reaping the lives of the Allied army like harvesting wheat. The already chaotic Allied army didn't have a trace of fighting spirit. All they wanted to do was to run for their lives. On the foothills on both sides, the Allied army soldiers who were running for their lives could be seen everywhere. General, should we arrange for the army to go down and provide support? One of the deputy generals carefully suggested. Yin Liang shook his head. It's useless. The mountain road is narrow. If we send our troops now, we will go against the flow and block their retreat route. It will only increase the panic of the soldiers. It won't help. It might even cause greater panic. Yin Liang didn't say this out loud. Then what should we do? Yin Liang's expression was cold. Wait for another half an hour. After half an hour, immediately close the city gate. Yes, sir. The deputy general's heart trembled, but he didn't dare to refute. It wasn't Yin Liang's fault for being cold. Although he didn't believe that the enemy had sent 100,000 soldiers, he still couldn't grasp the enemy's numbers. If the enemy took this opportunity to rush into the mighty pass, it would be a big problem. This was the principle of the merciful not leading an army. Rumble, half an hour later, the city gate of the mighty pass slowly closed, resolutely and firmly. A city gate separated the two worlds. Those who entered the gate were saved, while those who didn't were like fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Some soldiers who managed to escape to the foot of the city were mercilessly blocked outside the city gate. All of them looked desperate, and there was madness and anger in their despair. A kind of despair of being abandoned spread and took root in the hearts of the soldiers. Open the gate. Quickly open the gate. Open the gate. Let us in. General, save us. No matter how the soldiers begged, Yin Liang was indifferent. Compared to Xuanwu Pass, there were only 20,000 soldiers stationed at the mighty pass. Therefore, as a general under Lord Shimin, Yin Liang led his troops to the mighty pass and immediately took over the command of the pass. The garrison of the mighty pass did not even dare to let out a fart. Not to mention other things, Lord Shimin was the first lord of the North Sichuan city-state, a real giant. If Yin Liang didn't let go, no one dared to open the city gate. In such a short time, Chen Yuqing had led his troops to the vicinity of the mighty pass. Seeing the city gate close, he sneered in his heart. The enemy's reaction was not beyond his expectations. Stop advancing. Chen Yuqing did not let victory get to his head. He remembered Zhang Han's instructions. With a schwa sound, the 5,000 elite cavalrymen, who had barely suffered any damage, stopped uniformly even in the midst of the chaotic battlefield. Such a strong quality was really beyond the coalition army's reach. Pass down the order. Those who surrender will not be killed. Chen Yuqing gave the order, but he could see that the coalition army outside the city had already left the main force. Yes, in the blink of an eye, hundreds of light cavalries came out of the crowd and spread the order to surrender everywhere. When the coalition soldiers heard this, since the city gate was closed, there was no need to talk about loyalty. They simply chose to go all out and directly chose to surrender. With someone taking the lead, more people joined in. In a short time, there were countless people who surrendered. In the end, when the soldiers who were still hesitating saw that their comrades around them had surrendered, they were so scared that their hearts trembled, and they stammered to surrender. They were really worried that if they delayed any longer, they would be tied up by their comrades around them and sent over to ask for credit. Instead of that, they might as well surrender. They had long heard that the treatment of the army of Shanghai City was far better than theirs, so why were they still hesitating? On top of the city wall, Yin Liang's face turned even uglier when he saw this. For Yin Liang, this day was really a bit of a torment. Chun Yuqing did not dare to delay, and he had no intention of provoking the coalition army at the top of the city wall. After tidying up a little, he took the 10,000 surrendered soldiers with him and set off on the journey back. In this battle, Chun Yuqing only relied on 5,000 elite cavalries to kill more than 6,000 enemies and take 10,000 captives. It could be said that he had made a great contribution. Even Zhang Han, who had ordered the pursuit, probably did not expect to achieve such a brilliant result. Chun Yuqing, the young general, had become famous after this battle. Chapter 752. When Chun Yuqing escorted the prisoners of war back to Xuanwu Pass. The news of the fall of Xuanwu Pass had already spread. Ouyang Shuo, who was still patrolling in Shaozhou County, specially sent a letter to the General Administration of Military Affairs to give Chun Yuqing a special reward. The Leopard Tao army was not satisfied with just taking Xuanwu Pass. The two major legions were aggressive at the same time, and they could attack the Weiwu Pass on the side of Guilin County and the new Guiping Pass at any time. With the help of the P-1 cannons, the fall of the two major passes was only a matter of time. When Chuanbei City and Xiangnan City received the news, they were not so calm. Shanghai City had just taken down Lingnan City in a blitzkrieg, and their morale was high. As neighbors of Shanghai City, the two major city-states were trembling with fear. They were worried that one day the flames of war would burn their territory. However, it was clear that Shanghai City wanted to deal with Yunnan City first to give them a chance to breathe. But at such a sensitive time, Shanghai City suddenly took down Xuanwu Pass, which was really shocking. The lords of the two city-states gathered together once again to discuss countermeasures. What's Shanghai City's goal? Could it be that they're trying to create a diversion again? Is their true goal already set on our two city-states? The feudal lords trembled with fear. Impossible. With Shanghai City's current military strength, it is impossible to declare war on two major city-states at the same time. Then, what if Shanghai City's target is one of us? The scene instantly quieted down, and the lords looked at each other. The lords of the two major city-states looked at each other with some indecipherable meaning in their eyes. The atmosphere in the hall instantly became subtle. As the saying went, "It's better for you to die than for me." If Shanghai City really had to choose one of the two, they naturally hoped that Shanghai City would choose the other party instead of themselves. The Lord of Chuanbei City was even more shocked. After all, the Second Legion was attacking the Allied forces under their command. At this moment, someone stood up and said resolutely, "Impossible, Shanghai City will never go to war with us at this time." Why do you say so? When the Lord saw that it was Zhang Liang who spoke, they did not dare to be negligent and humbly asked for advice. They had seen Zhang Liang's ability, and they were all amazed. At this time, the two city-states really needed exciting news. Because the time is wrong, the location is wrong, and the strategy is wrong. Zhang Liang said 3 times in a row. Let's talk about timing first. At this time, Shanghai City was reorganizing its army, and the 3 new legions had yet to take shape. Wasn't it stupid to declare war at such a time? This is completely out of character for Shanghai City. Let's talk about the location. After taking down Lingnan City-State, the army of Shanghai City could directly attack Xiangnan Province from Shaozhou County or Chuanbei Province from Kunming County. If that's the case, why did you choose Guilin County, the middle place, to act rashly and alert the enemy? Finally, its combat techniques. Throughout the history of Shanghai City's battles, the various armies had cooperated with each other in every battle. This time, it was only the Leopard Army's 2nd Legion that had attacked. Even the 1st Legion did not cooperate with the 2nd Legion and took advantage of the situation to attack Guiping Pass. If they were really going to attack us, they wouldn't do this. What's even weirder is that the Second Legion didn't follow up their victory and take down the mighty pass in one fell swoop. In other words, the enemy had a powerful weapon to attack the fortress, but they were unable to advance. Isn't that strange? Zhang Liang looked around at the lords and said firmly, "That's why Shanghai City wouldn't start a war at this time." As soon as he said that, the lords clapped, all of them looking excited, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their hearts. They felt relieved, and the haze from before was swept away. Well said, it couldn't be any more correct. That's right, that must be it. What Mr. said couldn't be any more correct. The lords were not stingy with their praises, their expressions sincere. Their feelings were understandable. When the news of the fall of Xuanwu Pass came, which of the lords present did not panic and feel that the future was bleak? Only after they truly experienced the war did they truly understand exactly how great the fear they had toward Shanghai City was. Unknowingly, Shanghai City had become a huge mountain, pressing down on them until they couldn't breathe. The lords who had recovered slightly asked Zhang Liang earnestly, "Mister, since Shanghai City has no intention of starting a war, what is their purpose in taking down Xuanwu Pass this time?" Zhang Liang's expression was complicated as he said, "If I'm not wrong, they should want to take back Guilin County." The lords found that they couldn't refute him. A year ago, when they took down Guilin County, they weren't without pride. Who would have thought that in just a year, Shanghai City would become so powerful? The originally beautiful Guilin County had suddenly become a hot potato. Then, should we return it to them? A lord asked cautiously. Return what? We're already enemies now. Isn't it embarrassing to return it? Before Zhang Liang could say anything, another lord had already raised an objection. If you don't return it, won't they take it themselves? When the army of Shanghai City attacks Guilin County, how are we going to resist? Are we really going to start a full-scale war with Shanghai City? A lord of North Sichuan City retorted with a disdainful expression. If they want to go to war, then go to war. Do you think they could take down our two cities? Humph, it's easy for you to say. Have you forgotten how Lingnan City was destroyed? The lords argued endlessly, causing a huge ruckus. However, the south of Rosy Clouds, Lord Shimin, and the other big shots didn't make a clear statement. As a strategist, Zhang Liang had no right to speak at this time. The whole situation was in a deadlock. In the end, they parted on bad terms. While the two cities were bewildered and uncertain, unable to come to a consensus on the 24th day, the Grand Chamberlain of the Protectorate of Southern Border sent a diplomatic mission to the two cities, bearing the ultimatum of Ouyang Shah. Ouyang Shah announced to the two cities, "A year ago, the two cities took advantage of the precarious situation and took down Guilin County in disgraceful ways. After a year, Shanghai City is preparing to take back Guilin County. I hope that the two cities will not resist fearlessly. If the two cities are willing to peacefully return Guilin County, not only will Shanghai City let bygones be bygones, but is also willing to reconcile with the two cities. It is even willing to open a trade channel between the two cities, allowing the caravans of the two cities to carry out ocean trade through the sea trade channel opened by Shanghai City. If they refuse to hand over Guilin County, the army of Shanghai City will resolutely defend the honor of their territory and forcefully take back Guilin County. Even if they have to pay a great price, they will not hesitate. I hope that the two cities will not doubt the determination of Shanghai City to defend the honor of their territory." He hoped that the two city-states would give Shanghai City an answer within 3 days. This ultimatum was a combination of carrot and stick. In the words of the south of Rosy Clouds, shameless to the extreme, it is reasonable for them to attack Lingnan City, but it is disgraceful for us to take down Guilin County. This is simply preposterous. Zhang Liang frowned when he heard this. Could it be that his lord still didn't understand that as a lord, especially a lord of the wilderness, being shameless was also a virtue? Shanghai City was able to realize that it was a wise move to always put itself on the moral high ground. If it was an ordinary person saying this, it would be understandable, but the south of Rosy Clouds was a lord of the wilderness. Wasn't it childish and laughable for her to say such words? This move of Shanghai City was truly brilliant. Just as Zhang Liang predicted, Shanghai City had no intention of going to war with the two cities. The previous military operation to occupy Xuanwu Pass was just to pave the way for the diplomatic mission this time. Their real purpose was to smoothly reclaim Guilin County without bloodshed. In this way, not only could they wash away the shame of losing Guilin County, but they could also use this to stabilize the northern region and remove a time bomb for the upcoming war in Yunnan. More importantly, they could also plant the seed in the hearts of the two cities that Shanghai City could not resist, so as to establish a psychological advantage when they attacked the two cities in the future. In this way, it could be said to kill 3 birds with 1 stone. The current Shanghai City could be considered to have the bearing and embryonic form of a wilderness overlord. They no longer relied too much on force to solve problems, but used all kinds of means. They were extremely skilled. In contrast, the two cities were still in internal strife, so it was not enough at all. Zhang Liang was more and more pessimistic about the future of Rosy Cloud City and Xiangnan City. However, since he had boarded this ship, he would not easily get off. If he were to sink, he would sink with the big ship. As for the reconciliation and opening of trade channels mentioned in the ultimatum, although Zhang Liang did not know much about it, he knew that Shanghai City must have laid down a foreshadowing. It was not as simple as it seemed on the surface. It was such a bait that it was difficult for the lords of the two cities to refuse. Everyone had the mentality of an ostrich, and the lords were naturally no exception. Not only could they reconcile with Shanghai City, they did not have to live in fear, and they could also open up ocean trade. This temptation was difficult for them to refuse. That was the truth. The first to give up was the North Sichuan City. In the Battle of Xuanwu Pass, the coalition army of the North Sichuan City had lost more than 26,000 people. How distressing! They were even more terrified. In the face of the army of Shanghai City, they had no confidence to defend Guilin County. The interior of the North Sichuan City had long been conquered by the office of the Grand Herald. Many lords were already good friends of Shanghai City in secret, and their hostility towards Shanghai City was limited. Now that Shanghai City had taken the initiative to extend an olive branch, how could they not accept it? Not to mention them. Even a great lord like Lord Shimin was also hesitant. Few lords could refuse the huge profits of ocean trade. With the intentional people adding fuel to the fire and the continuous lobbying of the envoy group, the internal opinion of the North Sichuan City was slowly reaching a consensus, and they were willing to withdraw from Guilin County. The situation was developing in the direction that Ouyang Shua expected. Chapter 753. Jingshu Province, Danyang City. Upon receiving the news, Lord Chunshin was furious and blurted out, "A bunch of softies." The ambiguous attitude of the two city-states made Lord Chunshin very unhappy. Shanghai City's signal of reconciliation to the two city-states made him feel even more uneasy. It must be known that Xiangnan Province was Danyang City's last barrier against Shanghai City. Once Xiangnan City and Shanghai City reached a settlement and began trading, it would be very embarrassing for Danyang City. This move by Shanghai City really surprised Lord Chunshin. Lord Chunshin did not believe that Wu Yi would truly want to reconcile. It was just a delaying tactic. But the lords of the two city-states did not realize this and were still digging into Shanghai City's trap. How could Lord Chunshin not be angry? No, we absolutely cannot let Shanghai City succeed. Lord Chunshin's expression was gloomy. Man, Darren, the one who came was the head of Danyang City's intelligence organization, Chun Xiao, codenamed Xiao. Activate all our hidden chess pieces in Xiangnan City and do our best to prevent Xiangnan City from handing over Guilin County and reaching a settlement with Shanghai City. Lord Chunshin ordered. Hearing this, Xiao said hesitantly, Darren, Shanghai City's intelligence organization has always been active in Xiangnan City. Once we activate these hidden chess pieces, our arrangements in Xiangnan City will be completely exposed. Xiangnan City as an important neighbor of Danyang City, had always been Chun Zhao's main target. In order to plant these hidden chess pieces, Xiao had expended countless manpower and financial resources. From time to time, there would be bloody conflicts with Shanghai City's intelligence organization. Battles in the dark world were cold and merciless. They were unknown, but even more cruel. Now that all of these hidden chess pieces had to be activated, Xiao naturally had some misgivings. Lord Chunshun sighed deeply and said, "This can't be helped. If we don't do this, it will be difficult to succeed." In reality, even if they were all activated, Lord Chunshun was not certain of victory. Since we're going to do it, we must go all out. Lord Chunshun was not someone who did not dare to take a gamble. Xiao nodded, his expression grave. "This subordinate understands. I will definitely arrange it properly." The purpose of intelligence was to serve the territory strategy. Since the Lord had made up his mind, Xiao would definitely execute it. In the next 3 days, under the operation of Spring Dawn, the voices in the two city-states, especially Xiangnan City-State, that opposed to handing over Guilin County suddenly increased and became stronger. The situation was treacherous. As such, the south of Rosy Clouds was even more reluctant to take a stand, and even Lord Shiman began to hesitate. Because of Spring Dawn, S intervention, the originally clear situation suddenly became complicated and confusing. A layer of fog shrouded the sky above the two cities, making it impossible for people to see the truth inside. This great show in the southern border gradually attracted the attention of the entire world. Players who knew a little about the inside story realized that this was a battle between Shanghai City and Pilsun City over Guilin County, and the two major cities involved were actually just pawns. It was still unknown whose chess skill was better. It seemed like Rising Sun City had the upper hand, but no one believed that Shanghai City would not make a move. That was the truth. October 28th, Guay Ping Pass. Xiangnan City-State was hesitant, so Shanghai City was ready to give them a strong medicine. As Han Xen, the commander of the Leopard Army, said, "The other side is a group of miserable wretches. If we don't hurt them, they won't know the depth and what is justice." On that day, the First Corps of the Leopard Army officially set out for Guay Ping Pass. The 8 P1 cannons that had been used to attack Xuanwu Pass were all transported to the front overnight. The vast army did not hide its whereabouts and moved forward on the rugged mountain road. It was the coalition army of the Xiangnan City-State that was stationed at Guay Ping Pass, with a total of 50,000 people. The general who guarded Guay Ping Pass was the commander-in-chief of the allied forces of the two major cities in Guilin County, General Li Mu of the Warring States period. And in Guilin County behind Guay Ping Pass, Li Mu also arranged 30,000 regular troops, which could support Guay Ping Pass at any time. The garrison of the three passes, together with the 30,000 regular troops, just happened to be 150,000. When Li Mu got the news, he immediately announced that he would bury the Leopard Army in Guay Ping Pass. In detail, Li Mu was the meritorious general of the allied forces who captured Guilin County. For the garrison of Shanghai City, especially for the Leopard Army, he was a mortal enemy. The peak duel between Han Xian and Li Mu, a pair of peerless generals, attracted the attention of the world. Compared with Xuanwu Pass, it was more difficult for Shanghai City to capture Guay Ping Pass. It was not because Guay Ping Pass was steep, magnificent, or indestructible, but because there was only a narrow mountain road in front of Guay Ping Pass, which was difficult to accommodate the vast army. It was a place that was easy to defend and difficult to attack. For the attacker, it was a dead land. Even if more troops were sent, under the reasonable defense of the garrison, they would be defeated. Therefore, Li Mu's bold words were not without reason. To be honest, without the P1 cannons, Han Xian had no confidence to take Guay Ping Pass. The Leopard Army had been stationed in the withered fortress for nearly a year, and it was not without reason that they did not think about attacking Guay Ping Pass. Han Xian had the reputation of soldier immortal. He was good at seizing opportunities, but he was not a reckless person. In addition to the P1 cannons, Han Xian had other preparations. Taking Gillen County was planned together with the territory's military strategy for the second half of the year. It was not an impromptu idea, but a set strategic goal that Shanghai City must achieve. For this, the General Administration of Military Affairs worked with various departments to prepare various plans to deal with different situations. In the words of the Emperor, it is naturally best if Gillen County can be recovered peacefully. If not, then we will not hesitate to start a war. Therefore, the Leopard Army must be ready to go to war at any time. In order to take Gui Ping Pass, Han Xin had put a lot of thought into it. At about 10 o'clock in the morning, the First Corps of the Leopard Army was marching on the mountain road. Walking in front of the army was the 1st Division of the First Corps of the Leopard Army. It was also one of the few mountain barbarian heavy infantry divisions in the three armies. When it came to hatred for Li Mu, no one could compare with the mountain barbarian soldiers. In the Battle of Guarding the Pass a year ago, it was the 1st Mountain Barbarian Independent Division that had not yet received an official designation, led by the mountain barbarian young General Shi, who was guarding the two passes of Xuanwu Pass and Guiping Pass. In that battle, the entire Mountain Barbarian Independent Division was almost crippled, and even its designation was revoked. Therefore, the Mountain Barbarian soldiers had a blood feud with Li Mu and the allied army led by Li Mu. Not being able to participate in the battle against Xuanwu Pass, the Mountain Barbarian soldiers were already dissatisfied. Now that they had the opportunity to fight against the allied army led by Li Mu again, every Mountain Barbarian soldier's blood was boiling. At this moment, the sound of horse hooves came from the front of the mountain road. After turning a corner, the figure of a cavalryman appeared. Upon closer inspection, it was the vanguard who was scouting ahead. Urgent report, the enemy is attacking. The cavalryman looked anxious, constantly waving the flag that represented warning. Seeing this, the division commander of the 1st Division, Liao Kai, immediately ordered, "Stop advancing." Before Liao Kai could go forward to ask what was going on, he saw a sharp arrow suddenly pierce through the air. With a poochie sound, it hit the chest of the vanguard. He immediately fell off the horse, and it seemed that he would not survive. Accompanying the sharp arrow was an even more earth-shaking sound of horse hooves. The rumbling sound made the ground tremble, dust flew, and pebbles jumped up and down. Enemy attack, get into formation. Almost subconsciously, Liao Kai issued an urgent military order. The well-trained mountain barbarian soldiers immediately formed a formation on the mountain road, huge shields held in front of them. Before they could stand firm, the enemy cavalry had already charged over like a whirlwind. Li Mu, he really did not take the usual route. He actually took the initiative to launch a surprise attack while the Leopard Army was still marching. This kind of tactic of letting the defending side take the lead and launch a long-range surprise attack was really unheard of. Li Mu's intention was very simple. He wanted to find an opportunity to destroy the enemy cannons that were still being transported while the enemy was still marching. At the very least, he wanted to give the enemy a show of strength. Li Mu had conducted a detailed study of the fall of Xuanwu Pass in the past few days. He had been thinking of ways to destroy the cannons in the hands of the enemy. This time, the surprise attack midway was Li Mu's bold attempt. As for the effect, he would have to wait and see. It was almost impossible for Li Mu to destroy the cannons on the way. With Han Xion's ability, he naturally placed the cannons in the safest center of the army. How could he give the allied army a chance? But the show of strength was indeed a success, because even Han Xion did not expect that the allied army would launch a surprise attack at this time. When the 1st Division stopped advancing, the divisions following behind them were baffled. At this moment, there was a deafening roar in front of them. What's going on? In the center of the army, Han Xion called for the messenger. Reporting to the commander, the front army has been raided by the enemy cavalry and is desperately defending. Raid? Han Xion's expression changed, and he immediately guessed the enemy's intention. Good Lord, they are here to show us their strength. Pass the order to the 1st Division. Be sure to take down the enemy. Han Xion made a prompt decision. Han Xion was quite confident about the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division. This time, thanks to the 1st Division at the forefront, if it were an ordinary infantry division at this time, they would probably be in a mess. Han Xin did not know nothing about Li Mu. As a matter of fact, Li Mu was Han Xin Sr. This general of the Warring States period had stood out in the war against the Xiongnu and eventually became a good general of the Zhao Kingdom. Li Mu's cavalry corps was one of the top 10 corps in history. Therefore, Li Mu's use of cavalry tactics could be said to be ingenious. According to the intelligence investigated by the Military Intelligence Department, the cavalry under Li Mu's command was very fierce, very much like the cavalry of the Zhao Kingdom in the past. Even the weapons they used were the machetes of the Zhao Kingdom. In the territory, perhaps only Hua Xiubing, the god of cavalry war, could compete with Li Mu. Chapter 754. The battle between the Li Mu cavalry and the mountain barbarian heavy infantry was a battle between the strongest spear and the strongest shield. Especially on the narrow mountain path, it was a test of the skill and tactics of both sides. Amidst the sound of hooves, the cavalry were like sharp knives, fiercely stabbing into the mountain barbarian infantry square formation. The rugged mountain path was like flat ground under the cavalry's superb horsemanship. Block! The front row of barbarian soldiers gave the order. With a swoosh, fine steel shields were erected like cards, instantly forming a shield wall in front of the formation. There were 3 layers of shields, and they were even half a meter tall. The Black Panther totem carved on the outside of the shields looked cold under the sunlight. Inside the shields were mountain barbarian soldiers wielding axes, using all their strength to hold the shields. Because they had rushed into battle, the entire process was smooth. As they got closer, they could see the mountain barbarian soldiers' palms were sweating and the veins on their foreheads were bulging. They were nervous and excited. Boom! The charging cavalry were like high-speed tanks. With an unstoppable momentum, they smashed the front row of barbarian heavy infantry into disorder. The hastily formed shield wall was immediately broken. Under the control of the cavalry, batch after batch of fine war horses leapt into the air, instantly crossing over the already broken shield wall. In the air, the white light of the curved blades flashed and blood splattered. The barbarian soldiers who could not dodge in time were either killed or trampled into meat paste. The first line of defense was thus broken. The cavalry's attack was too sudden, not giving the barbarian soldiers any time to prepare. No matter how well trained the barbarian soldiers were, they could not instantly change from a marching state to a fighting state. During the march, the soldiers' weapons and equipment were all put away. Hastily accepting the battle was already at a disadvantage. More importantly, because they were marching on a mountain path, the vanguard was not equipped with crossbowmen at all. It could be imagined how terrifying it would be when the enemy cavalry charged without the slightest interference from the crossbowmen. In addition, the Li Mu cavalry was indeed fierce, and the vanguard was in a somewhat sorry state. The barbarian soldiers were barbarian soldiers after all. After suffering a loss, the troops at the back immediately reacted. In this short period of time, an even more powerful shield formation had already been quietly assembled. Li Mu's cavalry clearly felt that the resistance from the front was getting stronger and stronger. From time to time, he would suffer the attacks of the mountain barbarians' battle axes from both sides. What was even worse was that when the leading cavalry officer looked over, all he could see were densely packed mountain barbarian soldiers. He couldn't see any artillery at all. It was basically impossible to break through the entire barbarian defense line. Retreat. The leader of the cavalry was very straightforward and did not linger to fight. Once the military order was given, the well-trained cavalry immediately changed their formation. The rear army became the front army and retreated along the original route. On such a narrow mountain path, the cavalrymen were actually able to make a complete turn. If he hadn't witnessed it with his own eyes, he would have found it hard to believe. Li Mu's cavalry really deserved its reputation. In just a short while, the enemy cavalry was like a whirlwind, hurriedly arriving and disappearing, leaving behind a ground littered with corpses and battle wreckage. The barbarian soldiers looked at the messy battlefield and then looked at their own short legs. They could only watch as the enemy left, wanting to cry, but no tears came out. From the dejected expressions of the barbarian warriors, Li Mu's display of strength this time was very successful. This clearly sent a signal. The Allied forces were not the slightest bit afraid of the leopard troops' attack. When Han Xin received the frontline battle report, he muttered to himself, "It's a bad start." For the first time, Han Xin had a direct understanding of Li Mu's combat style. In the first round of the contest between the two famous generals, Li Mu had a small victory. After the interlude, the army continued marching. A small local conflict could not affect the course of the war. The real battle between the two sides would still be resolved at Guiping Pass. In the end, it was still unknown who was more skilled. At around 3 in the afternoon, the vanguard of the 1st Army Corps, the Mountain Barbarian Heavy Infantry Division, finally arrived at Guiping Pass and began to set up camp. Compared to the mountain path, the area in front of Guiping Pass was much wider, more than 30 meters wide. Even so, it was still too narrow for the army. The barbarian soldiers panted heavily, staring at the stronghold in front of them, and began to form a formation in front of the pass. An hour later, the major divisions arrived at the front line one after another. The entire army formation stretched for more than 10 miles. In reality, the only one that could truly threaten Guiping Pass was the 1st Army. The remaining 4 divisions could only watch the show for the time being. After the formation was completed, the P1 cannon, the protagonist of the war, was pushed to the front of the formation and unveiled its mysterious veil. As soon as it appeared, it was tightly guarded by the barbarian soldiers. On the top of the city wall, Li Mu looked at the cannon in the enemy's formation with a complicated expression. The previous cavalry raid did not achieve the desired result. As soon as he received the news, Li Mu knew what kind of bitter battle they were about to face. Next, it depended on whether the second tactic he prepared would work. With the roar of the cannon, the next scene of the war was simply a copy of the 2nd Army Corps' attack on Xuanwu Pass. Under the bombardment of the cannon, the garrison at the pass was beaten to the point of losing their temper. The only difference was that at the beginning, Han Xin gave the order to directly blast open the gate of Guiping Pass. The huge gate was riddled with holes in the face of the cannon. Han Xin was sure that Li Mu would not easily give up the plan to attack the cannon. Therefore, he simply blasted the gate and left the other side to carry out a surprise attack. Sure enough, less than half an hour later, Li Mu's cavalry rushed out again. Compared with the previous raid, the scale of the cavalry this time was even larger, as if they had come out in full force. The vast cavalry broke through the wreckage of the gate and crushed it to pieces. Ready! As soon as Li Mu's cavalry came out of the gate, the cannons immediately stopped firing. If a mere 8 cannons fired at the same time, they could indeed pose a certain threat to the cavalry, but they absolutely could not stop the cavalry from charging to the cannons. Although the P1 cannon had been modified by the No. 7 Research Institute, its firing frequency was still far lower than that of a crossbow, and even slower than that of an archer. A cavalry charge at such a short distance could only be fired once by the cannons. How many casualties could a volley of 8 cannons cause to the cavalry? At this stage, the only ones who could fight against the cavalry were the infantry, or to be precise, the heavy infantry. And the heavy infantry of the mountain barbarians were undoubtedly the trump card of the heavy infantry. The mountain barbarian heavy infantry, who had long been ready and full of fighting spirit, quickly formed a formation in front of the cannons. This time, the mountain barbarian soldiers came prepared, determined to teach the enemy a bloody lesson. After suffering several losses in a row, the mountain barbarian soldiers could be said to bear a grudge against Li Mu's cavalry. "Come on, bastard, have a taste of my tomahawk." The mountain barbarian soldiers looked extremely excited. And behind the mountain barbarian soldiers, Han Xin had already arranged archers to ambush them. This tactic was almost the same as the one Zhang Han had chosen. The only difference was that, due to the limitations of the battlefield, Han Xin could not arrange a cavalry unit to launch a surprise attack on the flanks. Could it be that a similar scene was going to repeat itself? Han Xian looked at the charging cavalry of Li Mu, his brows tightly knitted, not relaxing at all. He would never believe that Li Mu would be so stupid as to copy the same tactic as Yin Liang to destroy the cannons. There must be a trap. Compared to the fierce general Yin Liang, Li Mu was a master of tactics. The next scene confirmed Han Xian's guess. After Li Mu's cavalry rushed out of the gate, they did not spread out according to the normal tactic, but maintained a narrow formation, piercing into the mountain barbarians' formation like an arrowhead. What was even more strange was that after breaking through the mountain barbarians' first line of defense, the cavalry did not continue forward. Instead, they suddenly split into two, evenly moving to the left and right sides. Following closely behind, the cavalry began a second wave of charge along the opening that the front army had broken through. After breaking through the second line of defense, they also scattered to the left and right sides, and so on. The whole cavalry unit was like a drill. Through the relay, they opened up a gap in the mountain barbarians' formation at lightning speed. At the same time, the cavalry that constantly scattered to the two sides blocked the mountain barbarian soldiers on both sides from approaching the gap, covertly maintaining the gap. Needless to say, this tactic was created by Li Mu, specially designed to destroy the cannons. "How dare you!" A roar came from the mountain barbarians' formation. Being humiliated by the enemy in such a way, the dignity of all the mountain barbarians had been trampled. The mountain barbarian soldiers who had come to their senses, under the leadership of their officers, tightened their encirclement, preparing to encircle the cavalry that was constantly dispersing to the two sides and make them mortal enemies. In order to cause effective damage, the mountain barbarian soldiers directly abandoned the shields in their hands and fiercely chopped at the legs of the horses with their axes. Once the cavalry fell off their horses, they would immediately be chopped into meat paste. In the blink of an eye, Li Mu's cavalry suffered heavy losses. On the other hand, Li Mu's new spiral charging tactic was also displaying a miraculous effect. In less than 10 minutes, the relay cavalry completely broke through the mountain barbarians' defense line. Two P1 cannons were powerlessly exposed in front of the cavalry. Their following fate could be imagined. Under the cavalry's reckless charge, the two cannons were destroyed on the spot. Even so, they were still not satisfied. The cavalry unit that followed behind wanted to follow the gap and attack the cannons on both sides, wanting to destroy all 8 of the cannons. Unfortunately, the fierce mountain barbarian soldiers would not give them this opportunity. The more the cavalry unit charged in, the longer the line of defense became, and the more contact they had with the mountain barbarian soldiers. Because of this, the cavalry that followed behind could not smoothly disperse to the two sides. They basically died under the mountain barbarians' axes before they could even retreat. After the cavalry destroyed the two cannons, the mountain barbarian soldiers, who were extremely furious, launched their most powerful attack. The gap that had just been broken through was completely blocked by the mountain barbarian soldiers on both sides. The entire battlefield was like a pocket, and the mountain barbarian soldiers closed the opening of the pocket again. Unknowingly, the entire cavalry unit had already mixed with the mountain barbarian soldiers, entangling with each other. Chapter 755. The chaotic battle in front of Guiping Pass finally ended with Li Mu's cavalry retreating. After the battlefield was a mess. With the spiral cavalry assault tactic, Li Mu successfully destroyed 2 P1 cannons. That was the best Li Mu could do. He couldn't do anything to the remaining 6 cannons. In this battle alone, more than 4,000 cavalrymen were killed. Similarly, more than 2,500 mountain barbarian soldiers were buried here. The spiral cavalry assault tactic was no different from a suicidal tactic, killing 800 of the enemy, losing 1,000 of their own. Even so, after this battle, Li Mu's name would be known in the wilderness, for no other reason than that Li Mu had provided the wilderness army with an idea, a feasible tactic to use cavalry to deal with cannons. There was finally a way to deal with Shanghai City's P1 cannons. The premise was that they were willing to sacrifice a great deal. When the P1 cannons showed their power for the first time in Xuanwu Pass, the lords of the wilderness were terrified, and the military strategists of the various territories all cried out, "The wolf is coming." Some even asserted that with the existence of the P1 cannons, any fortified city or fortress would be nothing in front of Shanghai City's army, unable to stop the advance of Shanghai City's army. The only chance to win the war with Shanghai City was to seek a decisive battle outside the city. The traditional tactic of defending the city would be overshadowed by the P1 cannons. The Yan-Huan alliance did not hesitate to invest a large amount of money to speed up the upgrading of the existing cannon technology. But now, Li Mu gave a different answer. Amazing, truly amazing. Han Xian couldn't help but applaud Li Mu's genius idea. Then, his expression changed, and his eyes flashed. "But this is the end. Pass down the order, continue the bombardment." "Yes, sir." Boom, boom, boom. The cannons sounded again, pouring down on Guiping Pass. The strange thing was, no matter how the cannons bombarded, there was no response. After half an hour of bombardment, the top of Guiping Pass was dead silent. "Your Excellency, the enemy won't retreat, will they?" asked the Deputy General. The Deputy General was clearly worried that the scene of Xuanwu Pass's retreat would repeat itself. Han Xian shook his head and said confidently, "Impossible. Guiping Pass is the last barrier. Once the enemy retreats, it is tantamount to giving up on Guilin County. Then what should we do? The enemy has obviously given up on defending the city and is preparing to fight us inside the city. Pass down the order. Have the cannons aim at the city and clear it first. The first division would be the vanguard, and the second division would be responsible for supporting and attacking the city. Remind the two divisions to be careful and beware of any traps in the city." Han Xian had a deep understanding of Li Mu's cunning. The enemy had given up on defending the city. It was a helpless move, but it was also a very smart move. As the saying goes, you can only gain if you give up something. In the face of the artillery attack, Li Mu decisively chose to surrender the battlefront. This move of retreating in order to advance brought both sides back to the same level. Moreover, the Allied forces had the geographical advantage of fighting within the city. There was a reason why he felt helpless. Li Mu's move was brilliant, but it was also quite risky. Once he failed to defend the city, Guiping Pass would fall completely. Inviting a wolf into one's house also carried the risk of being eaten by the wolf. It turned out that Li Mu had made meticulous preparations for this battle. No wonder he dared to make such a bold statement before the battle. As soon as the first division entered the fortress and saw the scene in front of them, they were all stunned. In addition to the area near the city wall that had been bombed into ruins by the artillery, the area further away had been directly transformed into a trap concentration camp by the Allied forces. Based on the existing buildings such as streets and houses, the Allied forces had carried out extensive renovation of the fortress and set up countless traps. The barricades and arrow towers were all child's play. The most terrifying thing was the large pits in the streets and the hidden crossbows on the roofs. God knew how many archers were lying in ambush on both sides of the quiet street. If they really attacked like this, they would probably suffer heavy losses. Report the situation to the commander. Liao Kai, the division commander, did not act impulsively. "Yes, sir." Han Xian didn't know whether to laugh or cry when he got the news. Is it necessary to do this? Han Xian was a little speechless about Li Mu. What kind of obsession did he have to go to this extent? Li Mu's trap could stop the attack of the first division, but it was only a temporary delay. In the end, it could not reverse the situation of the battle and achieve a decisive result. The diplomatic offensive launched by Shanghai City had long shaken the will of the two major city-states. Taking down Guiping Pass was just to build momentum for the diplomatic activities and increase the bargaining chips. Who would have thought that Li Mu was so stubborn? Do you have to completely drag the two armies into the swamp of war? Han Xian was speechless. As a divine general, Han Xian not only knew how to fight, but also knew how to think about the overall situation. Han Xian was very clear about the strategic purpose of attacking Guiping Pass, so he was even more unwilling to pay for this battle. The sacrifice was too great. It seems that I have to use my ultimate move. Han Xian's eyes flashed coldly. Order the flying squad of the Withered Fortress to bomb Guiping Pass early tomorrow morning. Yes, sir. The messenger turned around and left. The purple magnetic ore worn by Ouyang Shuo could produce 1 blue magnetic ore and 2 green magnetic ore every month, and the green magnetic ore could drive the pseudo-aircraft. Since leaving Atlantis, Ouyang Shuo had saved 3 blue magnetic ore and 6 green magnetic oregon. All of these magnetic O-stones were used to form a flying team. When Zheng He led the ocean-going fleet back to the port of Gibraltar, under Ouyang Shuo's instruction, he purchased 12 pseudo-aircraft from Atlantis at one time. As soon as the Battle of Chibi ended, the 12 pseudo-aircraft were transported to a secret base in Lianzhou Basin. The General Administration of Military Affairs recruited the first batch of pilots from Shanghai City and trained in this Air Force base. 2 months later, the secret flying squad of Shanghai City was finally going to show up in the wilderness. For their first appearance, they chose the battlefield of the northern region. As early as during the Battle of Xuanwu Pass, Han Xian had applied to the General Administration of Military Affairs to temporarily borrow the flying squad. Considering the requirements of the actual combat test, the General Administration of Military Affairs approved Han Xian's application. The Battle of Xuanwu Pass went smoothly, and the flying squad did not have a chance to appear on the battlefield. At this moment, it was finally time for them to show up. Before the flying squad arrived at the front, Han Xian ordered the 1st Division and the 2nd Division to temporarily withdraw from Guiping Pass, officially announcing the end of the first day of the battle. That night, the 1st Division set up camp in the wild and made do for the night. On the morning of October 29th, facing the morning light, the defenders of Guiping Pass, who were still asleep, suddenly heard a roar. Before they could react, special incendiary bombs fell from the sky and exploded. This incendiary bomb was a bomb specially developed by the No. 7 Research Institute for pseudo-aircraft. Naturally, it was incomparable to the incendiary bombs used in modern warfare, but it was small and easy to carry. A pseudo-aircraft could carry 10 special incendiary bombs, and 1 incendiary bomb was enough to set a house on fire. The flying squad, consisting of 9 pseudo-aircraft, dropped all the incendiary bombs into Guiping Pass in just 10 minutes and then began to return. After returning to the Withered Fortress to resupply, the next round of air strikes would come as scheduled. Although the incendiary bombs made with indigenous methods were not as lethal as modern incendiary bombs, they were enough to ignite barricades, arrow towers, thatch, wooden houses, and all other easily flammable targets. Because there was no aiming device, the newly trained flying squad relied entirely on experience to grasp the timing of the bombs. Naturally, it was a mess, and the bombs were thrown here and there. If it were modern military officers, they would probably all be eliminated. Even so, for an ancient army like the Allied army, it was enough to make them tremble with fear. The psychological impact caused by it was unprecedented. Also, by accident, an ambushed soldier hiding in the thatch was set on fire by an incendiary bomb. Because of such an unprecedented attack, the entire Allied army was in chaos. Sparks of fire spread everywhere in the fortress, which was quite a spectacular sight. Put out the fire! Put out the fire! The regular army was instantly turned into a firefighting squad. Li Mu patrolled back and forth in the city, his face dreadfully gloomy. He did not expect that the enemy had such unheard of war weapons other than cannons. For the first time, Li Mu lost confidence in the war. Before the garrison of the fortress could come to themselves, another roar came from the sky. The flying squad returned. With the experience of the first time, the second round of airstrikes became more accurate. The fire that had not been put out was burning again. The soldiers of the Allied army wanted to cry, but had no tears. "Brother, you can't do this." After going back and forth 3 times, it was already noon. The flying squad regarded the airstrike as a flight training and used Guiping Pass as a live target. They dropped incendiary bombs again and again, bringing nightmares to the enemy. The endless bombardment completely crushed the will of the Allied army. To make matters worse, the fire in the fortress was burning more and more fiercely, and it seemed that it could not be put out any longer. If they stayed any longer, they would really die with the fortress. "General, let's retreat." The deputy general looked at the chief general's dark face and said carefully, "If we continue to persist, I'm afraid that the troops will explode and it will not be easy to clean up the mess." In fact, it was Li Mu's credit that the Allied army could persist until now. It was Li Mu's prestige in the army that kept the soldiers from collapsing on the spot. Even so, there was a limit to how strong they were. Li Mu looked lonely and said bitterly, "I understand. Order the retreat." The defeat of this battle was not the fault of the war. It was precisely because of this that Li Mu felt even more sullen. He now truly felt how powerful Shanghai City was. It was not just a gap in military strength. A sense of helplessness rose in Li Mu's heart. No matter how much effort he put in and what novel tactics he came up with, they could not withstand the bombardment of the enemy. Li Mu felt that when he returned, he needed to make up for it. Chapter 756. As Li Mu withdrew, the battle at Guiping Pass came to an end. The first appearance of Shanghai City's flying team had shocked the wilderness and frightened countless people. When Han Xian led the first army to enter Guiping Pass, what he saw was an isolated city with only the city wall left. All the buildings within the pass were engulfed in the sea of flames and transformed into ruins. Broken walls and buildings could be seen everywhere. Occasionally, one could see burnt corpses of the Allied soldiers who could not retreat in time. Fortunately, there were no civilians living in Guiping Pass. Otherwise, it would be another tragedy. After taking Guiping Pass, the Baotao army had a wide open field. Military observers once again asserted that with the cooperation of the P-1 cannons and the flying team, no city in the entire wilderness could withstand the attack of Shanghai City's army. The wilderness was silent. Unknowingly, the technological level of Shanghai City had surpassed that of other territories. "If we don't catch up, we will never be able to raise our heads again," Di Chun said, trying his best to persuade the members of the Yan-Huang Alliance to set up a common research fund to share technology. At the same time, Di Chun and the others set their sights on overseas for the first time. If they wanted to break the technological bottleneck without the foreshadowing of Western technology, it would be useless no matter how many top scientists they had. The limitation of the technological tree was a curse. In silence, a technological competition was quietly taking place in various territories in the China region. In this round of competition, the one who fell behind would not be able to be the future overlord of the wilderness. The butterfly effect of Ouyang Shua's rebirth was slowly expanding and gradually brewing into a storm. The war ended, but the aftermath was endless. Li Mu led his troops to Guilin County, and after meeting up with the 30,000 troops stationed there, he reported the situation in Guiping Pass in detail and waited for further instructions from the city. The two major cities, which were already surging with undercurrents, were in complete chaos when they learned that Guiping Pass had fallen. Moreover, the two envoys sent by the office of the Grand Herald took this opportunity to operate frequently, making the situation even more turbulent. Lobbying, assassinations, conspiracies, betrayals, sowing discord, etc. took turns in the two major provinces. It was very lively. Under the night sky, there were no less than 7 bloody battles between the Shanghai Guards and Spring Dawn. The lords of the two major city-states were involved in this chaotic whirlpool, unable to stay out of it. Between war and peace, between Shanghai City and Rising Sun City, they had to make a choice. Chuanbei City-State was the first to collapse. With the fall of Guiping Pass and the loss of this natural stronghold, Guilin County was like a defenseless young girl that could be ravaged by the Shanghai City army at any time. What was even worse was that the Allied forces stationed at the mighty pass might fall under the blades of Shanghai City's army at any moment. In the Battle of Xuanwu Pass, they had already lost more than 26,000 soldiers. They could not afford such losses anymore. On November 1st, North Sichuan City-State withdrew the coalition forces stationed at Weiwu Pass to the North Sichuan province without notifying South Hunan City-State. The army did not even stop at Guilin County and directly returned to the border of North Sichuan province. Upon receiving the news, Zhang Han didn't hesitate to lead his troops into the Weiwu Pass. At this point, the four passes that connected Guilin County and Shanghai City had fallen into the hands of Shanghai City. The situation in Guilin County became clearer and clearer. The withdrawal of the Allied forces meant that North Sichuan City-State had completely given up on Guilin County. That was the truth. When the army retreated, the officials of Guilin County that belonged to Chuanbei City-State also retreated. The relevant personnel and materials were all withdrawn from Guilin County in a short period of time. North Sichuan City-State did not go to the extreme. When they withdrew, they only took away important items. They did not burn down the territory, nor did they do anything that would anger the heavens and the people. This was a great help for Shanghai City to take over Guilin County in the future. North Sichuan City-State's actions sent a clear signal of reconciliation. They did not want to fall out with Shanghai City and hoped to use this opportunity to reach a relevant trade agreement. As soon as the news came out, all parties were shocked. The sudden defection of North Sichuan City-State was like a strong medicine. It further intensified the division of South Hunan City-State, which was originally wavering and had constant internal friction. The lords who supported Shanghai City had already made a threat. If the city-state still did not agree to withdraw from Guilin County, then they would withdraw on their own. The danger of the city-state disintegration was imminent. At this time, south of Rosy Clouds, who had been silent all this time, had no choice but to stand up and personally meet with the envoy from Shanghai City. They expressed their agreement to withdraw from Guiping County and reached a compromise with Shanghai City. Maintaining a complete city-state was the bottom line of south of Rosy Clouds. Once the city-state was divided, then in the future battles, South Hunan Province would no longer have the capital to resist. It would either be taken over by Shanghai City or completely become a puppet of the Yanhuang Alliance. With south of Rosy Cloud's statement and the fact that North Sichuan City-State had already withdrawn, Lord Chuanshin's chess pieces in South Hunan City-State could no longer do anything. Withdrawing from Guilin County was already the general trend of the two major city-states. If they continued to resist to the end and resolutely declared war, then they would be going against the general trend. It was no different from hitting a stone with an egg. Without the support of other allies, they could no longer jump around. Under the emergency cooperation of the Chamberlain of Dependencies, the Black Snake Guards, and Shanghai Guards, all kinds of methods were used. The chess pieces that Chun Shao had painstakingly planted were dismembered one by one. In the end, there were only 3 or 4 stubborn elements, but they could not cause any more waves. The only thing they could do was to follow Lord Chuanshin's instructions and cause trouble during the withdrawal from Guilin County. They would kill people, set fires, and create some additional trouble for Shanghai City. These kind of tricks were really not presentable. Lord Chuanshin's actions fully exposed his narrow-mindedness. He had already lost, yet he still played such petty tricks. He was ridiculed for no reason and became a mockery of the wilderness. Because of this, Lord Chuanshin was even more furious. Danyang City, the city lord's residence. Lord Chuanshin pointed at Zhao's nose and asked, "Damn it, speak, who leaked the news?" For no reason at all, he had become a mockery of the wilderness. This caused the prideful Lord Chuanshin to be flustered and exasperated. "Your subordinate is currently investigating." Zhao was rather calm. This was not the first time Lord Chuanshin had lost his temper like this. It was fine once one got used to it. Investigate, investigate, investigate. Have you found anything? Lord Chuanshin's anger had not yet subsided. Zhao said, "There are signs that it should be Shanghai City's intelligence agency spreading rumors, wanting to use this to smear our name. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that by a stroke of luck?" Lord Chuanshin was taken aback, his accumulated anger stuck in midair. It was extremely strange, and his face was completely red. What is this called? Lifting a rock to smash one's own feet. Lord Chunshin wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He really reaped what he sowed. If he had known earlier, he would not have made such an unnecessary move. Fine, fine, you can leave. Looking at Xiao, Lord Chunshin felt a wave of pain. Investigating was not as good as not investigating. Your subordinate takes his leave. With a whoosh, Xiao disappeared, hiding in the shadows. In the large study, only Lord Chunshin was left, his face cloudy and uncertain. After a while, Lord Chunshin muttered to himself, "Humph, even if we reconcile, how can you say you have no clothes? I won't let you off easily." Didn't you generously allow Xiangnan City to use this route to carry out ocean trade? Fine, I will borrow the shell of Xiangnan City and secretly carry out ocean trade. Let's see who wins and who loses. When it came to doing business, Lord Chunshin was indeed an expert. He was worried that he could not find a market for his territory's goods. With the convenience of ocean trade, he could naturally make a fortune. Thinking of this, Lord Chunshin suddenly felt secretly pleased. His previous gloominess swept away. November 5th, Gillen County. On this day, the two major cities completely withdrew from Gillen County, handing over the strategic buffer zone that they had painstakingly occupied to Shanghai City, accepting the olive branch extended by Shanghai City. The matter of Gillen County had been completely resolved. A year ago, no one would have imagined that such a scene would occur. Shanghai City's resolution of the Gillen County had become a classic example of the struggle for hegemony in the wilderness and was discussed enthusiastically by various experts. Some people joked that Shanghai City's comprehensive use of military, diplomatic, and other methods, relying on their crushing superiority in science and technology, was able to reclaim a county with practically no losses and also greatly ease the security situation in the north. It was truly brilliant. Such methods were enough for the various lords to learn from. The people inside all understood that everything else was just nonsense. Shanghai City's reclaiming of Gillen County, whether it was military action or sending out envoys, were all methods, just appearances. The real reason was Shanghai City's powerful strength supporting all of this. It was precisely because Shanghai City had the confidence to resolve the matter of Gillen County through military means that the Chamberlain of Dependencies had the leeway to play. Send the other lords to try, and see if they will pay any attention to you. That was why there was a saying, "Weak countries have no diplomacy." The two major cities withdrew from Gillen County. Under Ouyang Shua's instructions, Gillen County was temporarily under the control of the Leopard Troop before the officials from the Protectorate of Southern Border arrived. Another layer of meaning was that they hoped to use the Leopard Troop to carry out a purge of Gillen County. After all, the two major cities had operated in Gillen County for a year. Who knew how many spies and foreshadowing they had laid down? If one really believed them when they said they would withdraw all of them, then one would really be a fool. Other than the remnants of the two major cities, Ouyang Shua did not forget that Gillen County was the route of retreat that the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom had prepared. Countless remnants of the Taiping cult were hidden within. How could he feel at ease if he did not eliminate them? Other than military action, more important was the covert operation at night. The Military Intelligence Department, the Shanghai Guards, and the Black Snake Guard would work together again to carry out a thorough investigation of different groups of people. In the past year, the three major intelligence agencies had not been idle. They had never stopped infiltrating and monitoring Gillen County. The people or forces that were blacklisted by the three major agencies became the main targets of this operation. This kind of work that offended people naturally had to be dealt with before Ouyang Shua arrived at Gillen County. When Ouyang Shua arrived at Gillen County, it was time to buy people's hearts. Chapter 757. On the 6th day of the 11th month, Ouyang Shua ended his inspection of the three counties of Lingnan and departed for Gillen County. Because they had used official courier stations along the way, their speed was very fast. 3 days later, Ouyang Shua and his party arrived at Chiyu City, the administrative center of Wuzhou County. Last October, the army of Shanghai City had defeated Chiyu's army at the border of Wuzhou County and killed the great demonic god Chiyu. Ouyang Shua awakened his bloodline in that battle and was crowned the barbarian king. At that time, Wuzhou County was not peaceful. The hostility of the people was very strong. The mountain barbarian nobles were tyrannical. The people in the county were destitute, and the economy was directly paralyzed. It was a complete mess. It was under such circumstances that Fan Zhongyan, in the face of danger, received the order to transfer the governor of Wuzhou from the chief of administration to guard Ouyang Shua's side and govern Wuzhou County. A year had passed, and Wuzhou County had completely changed. Along the way, Ouyang Shua saw scenes of mountain barbarians and Han people living in harmony. When passing by County Town, Ouyang Shua even saw with his own eyes a mountain barbarian young man marrying a Han girl. Wuzhou County was the vanguard of the silkworm breeding strategy carried out by the Southern Border Protectorate. Mulberry forests could be seen on both sides of the road, exuberant with greenery. Even the mountain barbarians had accepted the Han farming culture and learned to plant mulberry and raise silkworms. Wuzhou County relied on the 100,000 Great Mountains to vigorously develop the medicinal herb planting industry, which was fruitful. According to the statistics of the Department of Industry and Development, Wuzhou County had already become the largest supplier of medicinal ingredients to the government hospital. For the territory's basic medical treatment to be successfully promoted, the contribution of Wuzhou County's medicine industry could not be ignored. The people were rich, and the country was peaceful. All of these could be attributed to Fan Zhongyan, the county governor. He was like a magician, using just a year's time to turn the place upside down. The role of a civil official in a territory was vividly demonstrated by Fan Zhongyan. For Shanghai City to be able to recuperate and strengthen its foundation in half a year, the various county governors had contributed greatly. Precisely because of this, when passing through Wuzhou County, Ouyang Shua naturally had to stop at Chiyu City for a day. In addition to seeing Fan Zhongyan, Ouyang Shua also wanted to deal with the barbarian race's affairs. Ouyang Shua, the barbarian king, had neglected his duty. It had been more than a year since he came to Chiyu City. Chiyu City, City Lord's Mansion. Accompanied by Fan Zhongyan, Ouyang Shua inspected the daily life of the people of Chiyu City. Wherever Ouyang Shua's group went, it would cause a commotion and the streets would be packed with people. In Chiyu City, Ouyang Shua, the barbarian king, had an extraordinary status and prestige. For the mountain barbarians in the city, the arrival of the barbarian king was no different from a major festival. Ouyang Shua took the opportunity to meet with the officials of the prefecture and gave them some words of encouragement. According to the chief of administration, Xiao He, the officials sent out by Wuzhou County could be ranked in the top 3 of all the counties in the territory. Of the hundreds of officials selected to be transferred to the 3 counties of Lingnan this time, 50 would be from Wuzhou. It was obvious that Fan Zhongyan, the former head of the administration, had played a part in this. In terms of nurturing young officials and unearthing outstanding talents, Fan Zhongyan also had extraordinary talents. At noon, Ouyang Shua was invited to a banquet by several big medicine merchants in the county in the biggest restaurant in the city. These medicinal herb merchants were the wealthiest people in the county, and they were the leaders of the Medicinal Herb Association in the territory. A single disagreement could determine the price of medicinal herbs in the market. Towards these gods of wealth, Ouyang Shua naturally had to give them some face. In the afternoon, he listened to the report from the prefecture. It was a full 2 hours of torture. Finally, Ouyang Shua took the time to talk to Fan Zhongyan alone. In the study, Fan Zhongyan was clearly somewhat excited. It was no wonder that in the report from the prefecture, Ouyang Shua did not stint on praising Fan Zhongyan and the prefecture. To be able to obtain the emperor's approval for a civil official like Fan Zhongyan was the greatest honor. Sven, do you have any thoughts of changing the environment? Ouyang Shua's words were shocking. On the way to Guilin County, Ouyang Shua had always been thinking about the candidate for the governor of Guilin County. Xiao He had even sent him a letter asking him to make a decision as soon as possible so that Guilin County could operate normally as soon as possible. The governor of Guilin County that Ouyang Shua had first chosen, Pei Ju, had already been transferred to Xingzhou County. In such an important position, Ouyang Shua naturally could not transfer Pei Ju back. After thinking about it, he could only think of other ways. Guilin County's strategic position was even more important than Xiaozhou County of Lingnan Province. Furthermore, it had been governed by two large cities for a year, so the situation was even more complicated. Therefore, Xiao He suggested that it would be best to choose one of the current governors to oversee Guilin County. Ouyang Shua completely agreed with Xiao He's suggestion. Although Shanghai City had already reached an agreement with the two large cities, Ouyang Shua had personally gone to Guilin County to sign a trade agreement with the two large cities. On the surface, they were friendly, but could not conceal the undercurrents surging here. Even the North Sichuan city-state, which was the first to accept Shanghai City's olive branch, did not return to their respective territories after withdrawing from Weiwu Pass. Instead, they were stationed at the southern border. The intention was self-evident. The two large cities were still full of vigilance against Shanghai City. Everyone knew that the current so-called reconciliation was only an expedient measure of both sides and was forced by the situation. In the future, once there was a slight disturbance, Guilin County would once again become a battlefield. It was not an exaggeration to say that Guilin County was the center of the Northern Territory. Such a strategic location naturally needed to select a powerful governor to cooperate with the Leopard Tau army stationed there to do the overall military defense and relevant combat preparations of the Northern Territory. Fan Zhongyan, Tian Wenjing, Bao Shuya, and the other veteran governors naturally entered Ouyang Shua's line of sight. With three choices, Ouyang Shua needed to make a decision. Needless to say, Fan Zhongyan was qualified. The model governor of the Qing dynasty, Tian Wenjing, was also a suitable candidate. Speaking of which, Tian Wenjing was the first official governor of the territory. He had the most experience and was also the most capable. The vast Xingzhou County was well managed by Tian Wenjing. Relying on shipbuilding, salt, timber, and spices industries, Jingzhou County was the most prosperous county in the territory. Its revenue even surpassed that of the recently abolished Lianzhou County and was second only to Shanghai City. The rise of the ocean trade pushed Jingzhou County to a new height. Under Tian Wenjing's mediation, the Li clan people of Jingzhou County walked out of the mountains and lived on the plains. As the first negotiator for the affairs of the brute race, Tian Wenjing's ability to deal with ethnic affairs was even better than Fan Zhongyan's. Apart from these two, the governor of Sun Prefecture, Bao Shuya, was also a suitable candidate. The person recommended by the chief of the administration, Xiao He, was Bao Shuya. Before becoming the governor of Sun Prefecture, Bao Shuya had been the governor of Thunder Prefecture. When he was transferred to Sun Prefecture, he had also been in charge of a large county that had been harmed by the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. In less than half a year, Bao Shuya had basically purged the remnants of the Taiping Heavenly Kingdom. His ability was evident. Furthermore, Sun Prefecture was adjacent to Guilin County. Bao Shuya was familiar with the local situation and had a tacit understanding with the Leopard Tau army. These 2 points are the reasons why Xiao He had recommended Bao Shuya. All 3 governors were suitable candidates. It was truly difficult to make a choice among them. After inspecting Wuzhou County, Ouyang Shua finally made up his mind to officially designate Fan Zhongyan. For no other reason than that of the 3 counties, only Wuzhou County did not need Fan Zhongyan to personally oversee it. The various government affairs of Wuzhou County were already on the right track, and there were no more thorny problems. Any other governor would be able to handle it. On the contrary, whether it was Jingzhou County or Sun Prefecture, they could not do without Tian Wenjing or Bao Shuya for the time being. Jingzhou County's ocean trade had just picked up. It was a crucial period and needed Tian Wenjing to oversee it. Sun Prefecture bore the heavy responsibility of connecting Shanghai City and South Sichuan province. It was also the rear of the Leopard Tao army, so it also needed Bao Shuya, the old governor, to continue holding down the fort. Just based on this point, Fan Zhongyin took advantage of the situation and won this round of competition. When Fan Zhongyin heard the Lord's question, his heart couldn't help but tremble. If it weren't for the fact that his willpower was high enough and his ability to maintain his composure was deep, he probably would have immediately revealed an excited expression. It wasn't that there was something wrong with Fan Zhongyin. It was just that the position of governor of Guilin had deep implications. Fan Zhongyin had heard of the governor of Guilin's difficult childbirth. After all, Fan Zhongyin was the first chief administrative officer of the territory and had once been the chief civil official of the territory. He was well informed. He had faintly heard rumors that when the Lord was annexing Kunming County, he had first proposed the idea of a provincial governor. Of the three major provinces of the territory, the governor of Yunnan province was, without a doubt, Bai Hua. The remaining two governor-general positions were tempting enough, especially the future governor of South Sichuan province. That was the governor of Zhili, the head of all the governors. Recently, there had been rumors in the officialdom that the future governor of South Sichuan province was likely to be selected from among the governors of South Sichuan province. It was precisely because of this that the appointment of the governor of Guilin affected the nerves of some people for no reason. The situation was very clear. Guilin County was the most strategic of all the counties in South Sichuan province. If Guilin County could be governed well, it would undoubtedly be a strong capital for the officialdom. In this way, when the future governor position was contested, they would have the upper hand. There were even rumors that the candidate for the governor of Guilin that the Lord had drawn up was most likely the best candidate for the future governor of South Sichuan province. No matter how calm Fan Zhongyin was, when he heard these rumors, it was inevitable that waves would rise in his heart. It wasn't that he was greedy for power and position, but it was a kind of instinct that came from being a civil official of the Song dynasty. As an official, he would bring prosperity to the people. Fan Zhongyin had a saying in the Yueyang Tower: when one is high in the temple, one worries about the people. When one is far away from Jianghu, one worries about the ruler. The higher the official position, the better it would be for the people. I will follow the arrangements of the Lord. Fan Zhongyin said. Ouyang Shuo looked at Fan Zhongyin with an indescribable meaning. How could Ouyang Shuo not know about these rumors in the territory? Shen Bohai had long suggested to investigate the rumor mongers, but he stopped him. The position of Zhili governor was related to the lifeline of the territory. How could Ouyang Shuo easily allow others to take it? Those rumors were a little childish and could not be taken seriously. However, Ouyang Shuo was happy to see the healthy competition between the county governors. Therefore, Ouyang Shuo neither interfered nor expressed his position. Chapter 758. Since that's the case, Sven, you should prepare for the handover and choose a day to go to Guilin County. At the same time that Ouyang Shuo decided on the candidate to be the governor of Guilin, he already had a plan for the candidate to replace Fan Zhongyin as the governor of Wuzhou. He was the deputy of the current governor of Zhan and Mulangyue, Chui Shaoxi. After Chui Yingyu, Chui Shaoxi was the first civil official of the Chui clan to draw close to Shanghai City. He held important positions such as county magistrate and prefectural magistrate. He also assisted Mulangyue in governing Zhan and county for a year. Now, Chui Shaoxi finally had the opportunity to be promoted. He was officially promoted to county governor. At the same time, Chui Shaoxi was the first native county governor that Shanghai City had nurtured. If nothing unexpected happened, Chui Shaoxi would reach his limit as a county governor. It was almost impossible for him to advance any further. After all, compared to a historical official like Fan Zhongyin, there was still a big gap. At the same time, Chui Shaoxi's promotion also helped balance the negative effects of Song when's promotion to Jiaozhou's county governor. The Chui clan and the Song clan were still able to keep pace with each other and compete with each other. There was no need for outsiders to know about the political tactics involved. Yes, sir. Fan Zhongyin stood up and bowed respectfully. A trace of ripples couldn't help but arise in his heart. Being able to take over as Gillen's county governor was undoubtedly a milestone victory for Fan Zhongyan. Ouyang Shuo was extremely sharp, especially after cultivating the inner canon of the Yellow Emperor to the 11th level. Ouyang Shuo discovered that his grasp of people's hearts and their emotions had risen to a whole new level. To put it bluntly, it was mind-reading. This was an extremely profound feeling. Ouyang Shuo was naturally unable to read the thoughts and the hearts of others, yet he was able to acutely notice the fluctuations in the emotions of others, and even a tiny trace was unable to escape his senses. It was precisely because of this that since Ouyang Shuo returned from his voyage, the officials and generals of Shanghai City seemed to be even more reserved and careful when they reported to him. The reason for this was that they felt as if their every move, every thought could not escape Jun Shang's discerning eyes. As such, how could they not be fearful and fearful? Without a doubt, this was also a unique ability of the king. After that, the two of them talked in secret in the study until dinner time before coming to an end. At around 7 o'clock in the evening, Ouyang Shuo stayed in the courtyard. A cool breeze blew past, and the entire city was filled with the fragrance of osmanthus, intoxicating everyone. At night, Chiyu City was not as hot as it was during the day. The cool night breeze was refreshing. This kind of night was the best time for the clansmen to chat. Ouyang Shuo's schedule during the day was packed to the brim, so he didn't have time to meet with the barbarian chiefs. At night, the four most influential clan leaders were finally invited to the small courtyard for a chat. Because it wasn't a formal conversation, Ouyang Shuo simply ordered for wine to be served in the courtyard pavilion. The special osmanthus cake was soft and delicious. The territory's specialty, the three-flower wine, was even more mellow. Speaking of the three-flower wine, it was incredible. Because it had long established its reputation in the royal city, the Three Flowers wine was now one of the best wines in the wilderness. Especially after being improved by Master Brewer, its taste had become even more mellow, and it had already become one of Shanghai City's calling cards. Now that he had conquered Gillen County, he would vigorously develop the local brewing industry. After all, no matter how good the spring water in Lianzhou Basin was, it was not as good as the authentic mountains and rivers in Gillen. Wine brewed locally in Gillen would definitely be more addictive. There was only a round stone table in the pavilion. Ouyang Shuo sat at the head of the table, and the four old men sat cautiously on both sides. The barbarians were originally very rough, but now they had completely mastered the etiquette of the Han people. Ouyang Shuo was speechless when he saw this. Among the four, two of them were Chiyu's brothers. They had appeared in the wilderness with Chiyu and could be considered as the ancestors of the barbarians. The remaining two were from the 100,000 Mountains, and the other was from the Southern Cloud Province. After becoming the barbarian king, Ouyang Shuo knew that the mountain barbarians were widely distributed in the southern border, and it was beyond imagination. In addition to the traditional southern Sichuan province and southern Ridge province, there were also Yunnan province, northern Sichuan province, and Shu province. In addition to the 100,000 mountains, Shu province was the second largest gathering place of the mountain barbarians. The mountain barbarians gathered by Chiyu City were mainly concentrated in the 100,000 mountains, and some came from a northern Sichuan province and Yunnan province. But because the mountains were high and the roads were long, and the players' territories or the former Taiping Heavenly Kingdom were in between, there were still a large number of mountain barbarians living in the two provinces. Chief Mu, do you still have contact with your clansmen in Yunnan? Ouyang Shuo raised his cup, smiling as he asked the chief of the Southern Cloud Province, Mu Yao. Yes, they are very envious of our life here. At the mention of this, Mu Yao was somewhat moved. Not long ago, this old man went to Yunnan to reminisce with a few of my older brothers in the clan. When they heard about our life in Wuzhou, they all wanted to immediately move here. It's just that the war in Yunnan is about to begin, and it's not good for them to leave their old home without permission, Mu Yao said regretfully. Ouyang Shuo nodded. The war in Yunnan is imminent. I'll have to trouble you to tell the clansmen there to mobilize and prepare to cooperate with the army at any time. When Yunnan is taken, they will be able to live a good life. This old man will definitely convey the king's intentions. That's good. Ouyang Shua wasn't specifically instructing him. He had just mentioned it in passing. He didn't expect the mountain barbarians to be of any use in the war in Yunnan. At most, they would serve as guides during the assault. Yesterday, Ouyang Shua had received a report that Hua Tsubing's 1st Imperial Guard Corps and Shi Wansue's 2nd Dragon Stallion Army had successfully arrived at the front lines. At the same time, the 2nd Imperial Guard Corps and the 4th Dragon Stallion Army had finished their reorganization. Ma Chao, Chao Chun, Xiahou Yuan, and the other generals of the 3 countries had finished their training and were hurrying to meet up with their troops. The 2 armies immediately set off for the Yunnan battlefield. If everything went smoothly, the war in Yunnan would truly begin in early December. According to the Black Snake Guard's report, the negotiations between the Yin-Huang Alliance and the Yunnan city-state had also been settled. The Yin-Huang Alliance had invested heavily this time, mobilizing a total of 200,000 soldiers to support the Yunnan city-state. Handan City alone had sent 60,000 soldiers. Guilin County had been taken back by Shanghai City, and the furious Lord Chunshin had also sent 50,000 soldiers at once. Adding on the Yunnan city-state's 200,000 soldiers, it was enough to contend against the army of Shanghai City. After all, 2 of the 6 legions dispatched by Shanghai City had only just been reorganized. In terms of overall battle strength, the 2 sides were basically on the same level. Ouyang Shua guessed that the unforeseen event in Guilin County was probably the Yin-Huang Alliance's decision to use this last opportunity to attack Shanghai City. Since the Yin-Huang Alliance had made a move, the trump card that fallen Phoenix City and Wanshur City had not used in the Lingnan battle would once again appear. Even the gift that Ouyang Shua had prepared for the Yin-Huang Alliance could be used in advance. Ouyang Shua believed that the Easter egg he had prepared would definitely give the Yin-Huang Alliance a huge surprise. The Siege Lion City also took the initiative to communicate with Ouyang Shua, saying that it would do its best to mobilize the army of the Jiangchuan province to monitor the Xiangnan city-state and Danyang City in the north. As for Dragon-Seeking City, Ouyang Shua did not give any instructions, leaving it to make its own decisions. Because of this, the upcoming war in Yunnan would no longer be a simple local war. It could be foreseen that this unprecedented war involving millions of soldiers would be the culmination of Gaia's 3 years of war, affecting the nerves of countless people. The result of this war would directly affect the fate of the 2 alliances in the China region for the next year. Since Guilin County had already been recovered, and Kunming County had also been officially annexed to Shanghai City, Qi rearranged the battle deployment. The 6 major armies that participated in the war would all be transferred to Kunming County, awaiting further orders. According to the arrangements of the General Administration of Military Affairs, the 6 major armies would temporarily be reorganized into the Western Expedition Army, with Bai Qi as the commander of the Western Expedition Army, Hua Tsubing as the deputy commander, and Kunming County Chief Bai Hua as the senior advisor. Even the chief of the Southern Border Protectorate, Shi Jiasu, was sent by Ouyang Shua to the Western Expedition Army as the military advisor. The Western Expedition Army's headquarters was set up in Lingxi City. At that time, the Western Expedition Army was likely to attack from all directions with Kunming County as the center, instead of breaking through from one point. At the same time, in view of the fact that Guilin County had been conquered, Shanghai City and the 2 major cities were about to reach an agreement, and the strategic position of the Withered Fortress had dropped sharply. The General Administration of Military Affairs had already ordered Feng He to lead the newly formed 3rd Corps of the Leopard Army to move from the Withered Fortress to Zheng and County in the west. Without a doubt, the 3rd Corps of the Leopard Army would be the main reserve force for the war in Yunnan. As for the North Sichuan city-state, it would be monitored by the 2 most powerful corps of the Leopard Army. Similarly, the Brave Tiger Army would be responsible for monitoring the South Hunan city-state. The entire battle involved almost all of Shanghai City's army, and it was not an exaggeration to say that it was the pinnacle battle of the southern border. If they won this battle, Shanghai City would truly establish their position as the supreme overlord of the southern border and establish an unparalleled foundation for the establishment of Gaia in the fourth year. Otherwise, there was no need to talk about it. Because of this, both sides would not easily attack. Just like now, the 200,000 troops of the Yan-Huang Alliance had already been teleported to the Yunnan province. However, no one knew which city or how many cities the army was teleported to. In view of the terrifying intelligence-gathering ability that Shanghai City had displayed in the Battle of Lingnan, Di Chun and the others had clearly made careful arrangements for this battle. They would definitely not let the Shanghai Guards or the Black Snake Guards easily discover their whereabouts. Even if they knew that Shanghai City still had 2 corps that had not arrived on the battlefield, they did not choose to take the initiative to attack Kunming County where the army had gathered. Di Chun and the others were not fools. There were 4 corps in Kunming County, and if they attacked, they would immediately lose the advantage of the terrain. It was equivalent to using their weakness to attack the enemy's strength. What they needed to do now was to set up countless traps in the various counties and wait for the Shanghai City army to take the bait. Therefore, the initiative of the war was still in the hands of Shanghai City. The starting gun of the war had to wait for Ouyang Shua to give the signal. But what about Ouyang Shua now? He was in Chiyu City, thousands of miles away from the battlefield, drinking 3-flower wine, eating osmanthus cake, smelling the fragrance of osmanthus flowers, and chatting with 4 old men. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.